Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and I apologize for the audio just dropping out just now. That was really strange. But yeah, I was trying to play the play music, and it just disappeared, just completely went away. And I was like, well, I guess we're starting the show anyway.
It dropped down into the sea and froze.
Yeah, we're off to a great start. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight, folks. We're gonna do the superhero rewind commentary for Captain America: The First Avenger, which is the 5th movie in the MCU series. Obviously, we're not doing these in order. Austin, I think so far for the commentary project, the only movie we've tackled is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Am I right?
I think so. Actually, I don't think we have tackled any other MCU.
Anything else out of 34 commentaries so far? That's the only one we've done, because we keep lining up doing like 90s pulp superhero movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
and Batman things.
You and I have done the first 2 Guardians movies, but that's separate from this.
That predates this, yeah.
Like only just, but
yeah. And we've done some X-Men stuff. We've done some Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Once again, he's having to walk around his house.
I know. You gotta love dog sitting. Sorry. Okay, I'm good. He's going.
You know how hard I'm resisting the urge to just start over right now.
You're gonna say just to like fire me, like that's it, just hang up and never completely ghost me.
Dude,
right
I'd have to fire myself the way we opened the show today. I don't know how I completely lost the intro music. Well, anyway, we won't do too much preamble tonight. It's Captain America: First Avenger. Obviously, I've talked about this movie quite a bit in the past, but we're doing everything, so we're back again. And it is interesting revisiting this movie for the first time in a long time after, obviously, the sheer amount of MCU we've had, and there are as many MCU movies as there are now superhero rewind commentaries, and we've got another Captain America movie coming out next year, and
we just got.
I've not talked about this since Endgame. Since we wrote this character out.
Well, and this week we just got Chris Evans confirmed for the new Avengers, and just today we got Haley Atwell confirmed for it too.
Oh, is that right? I hadn't heard that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it only just came out a few hours ago, I think.
Well, that's not altogether surprising.
No, not at all. The funniest thing for me, though, is that I heard that and I was like, oh, of course. They brought Evans back. They're going to have a scene where we see them together and then he leaves. And then I went, oh, yeah, wait a minute. She's like Captain Britain or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're just going to have the Haley Atwell Captain America thing again.
Mm-hmm. My mind just went to, she'll be like a cameo. She'll be like, oh, goodbye, Steve. Go have fun on your adventure.
No, they'll do the same thing now we're just talking about news. They'll do the same thing that they did with her in Multiverse of Madness, except she'll get a much larger role, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there'll be a duo between.
I just hope that movie doesn't feel like a live-action episode of What If. That's my worry.
Exactly. But anyways, back to when the MCU was good.
Yeah, this is back during the nice, quaint years when you only got a couple of these a year, and it felt, I don't want to say oversaturated back then, but it felt overwhelming that you were getting a universe of superhero movies that all existed in the same world, and you got more than one in a year, and you were leading to the big event team-up movie that fans growing up had always wanted from at least one of the big two, and we were finally getting. Austin, something I had forgotten about in preparation for this was that the after credits scene is just a trailer for Avengers. I forgot that they were that far along. Mm-hmm. In making that project at the point that this came out. I remember the after credit scene being that scene that's actually in the Avengers with Nick Fury coming to him, which is so kind of odd, by the way. It feels like a double beat, because it's like we just saw Nick Fury in the actual end of the movie, which could have been an after credits. I'm glad it wasn't, but a lesser movie and a later Marvel movie would have made that very scene an after credits scene, right? and then you get him walking in again, and it's filmed in a shot like a reveal, but the last character you saw him interact with was Nick Fury. But I didn't remember a whole trailer after it.
Yeah, I've never liked that choice. Just like in retrospect, I'm sure it was cool at the time, but like I didn't even see this movie until after the Avengers, so it's like an easy skip one for me.
I think
But
I think it's the only one they did like
it
that.
is the only time they've done that. Yeah.
You know what it feels like?
What's that?
It feels like Back to the Future 2.
Oh yeah, it is kind of like that. You're right.
Because I don't know if you remember that, but Back to the Future 2 has a trailer for 3 at the end of it.
Yep. Oh, very true.
It's just like that.
Except that's just a trailer. It's not a scene that then goes into a trailer, which is even weirder.
And apparently when they were originally conceptualizing this movie, oddly, Back to the Future was one of the big inspirations for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
One of
there's
things Feige
a
was looking at.
reference to Back to the Future in this, in like a newspaper. I think it's this movie that it happens.
Oh, crazy.
There's like a little Easter egg joke where it's like, I don't know, like old elderly scientist man like arrested for inappropriate relationship with teenage boy. It's something like that.
I missed that.
Yeah, I think it's this movie, but
There's
I
a
don't know
lot of
where it
random
is either.
headlines.
Yeah, there's also like maybe a Raiders of the Lost Ark reference in this movie, but I don't know.
Well, we'll look for those things. If you want
And
to
that one
watch
I
it,
at least know where it is. But
if you want to watch it with us, and we encourage you to do that, make sure to jump on Disney Plus. Of course, all of these are there, or get out your DVD, Blu-ray, however you want to watch it. Get it to timestamp 0 past all the menus, and get ready to press play when I say now. Austin, I no longer have a regular Blu-ray or DVD box for this, so I'm just holding up the sleeve that comes in the big suitcase for the deluxe Phase 1 set, which is lovely and wonderful, but there's a part of me just for camera that kind of wishes I had kept the old releases. I went ahead and got rid of them just for the sake of space. But it is a little bit odd. I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll just get cheap copies and replace them, or maybe get like cooler, nicer versions than I had before, but still keep this, because it is weird looking at my alphabet back here and not having some of these movies in that alphabet.
Mm-hmm. No, I did the same thing with Phase 1 and Phase 2, and then I prematurely got rid of all of my Phase 3 movies.
Yes, you told me about this.
Boy, did I get screwed on that one.
So that's also the way you have this, is with this
Yeah,
sleeve.
exactly.
Do you have it in front of you, or you just watching it at Disney Plus?
I'm just on Disney Plus just because I'm dog sitting, so I don't have it with me. But yeah, I do have that set.
The art on the sleeves is cool, where it's like hand-drawn looking like stills from the movie, and then it's got Red Skull holding the cosmic cube on the back. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. No, it is pretty neat. I like the artwork on those.
Well, let's go ahead and jump right in, shall we? This one is a kind of just standard movie length. I think this is just a couple hours, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's just over 2.
Back when these things didn't have to be 2 hours and 45 minutes every time.
Well, apparently the new cap is going to be 2 hours and 45 minutes. I don't know how.
It's supposed to be really long, yeah. You know, and it used to be if a movie was really long like that, you would expect it was really beefy and had, you know, a surprisingly complex and compelling story. Like, you know, Dark Knight is like, what, 220? But every time I think about that movie, I think it's 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's just, there's a lot going on.
But it was a big deal back then that was 20 minutes long. And I remember a lot of people that didn't like it as much as a lot of people that thought it was the second coming of Christ. Their one complaint was, it's just a little long.
Yeah, I remember hearing that
You
a lot,
don't have that
too.
anymore. Now everything's too long.
Yeah, I feel like Cap 4 is only going to be like nearly 3 hours because they've had like 6 rounds of reshoots. They have too much footage.
They're just going to put all of it in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, like, is that going to be a disaster, or is there a chance it's like shockingly okay?
I mean, I think the trailers don't look good, so I'm going to say probably it's going to be a disaster, but we'll see.
Okay, and I actually like what the trailers look like, so you and I aren't in the same place there.
I like the tone.
And I'm not going to give you crap for that. I'm just happy to be, like, you know, mildly cautiously optimistic about that movie, because you know how much I like Falcon.
No, it's funny because we're like completely flipped, where you're more interested in Cap 4, and I'm like, Thunderbolts looks like it has more energy than these movies have in a while. I don't think it'll be good, but we'll
Well, I
see.
don't even disagree with that. I just don't care.
Yeah, oh yeah, and I don't really
I
either.
mean, I hope I'm made to care. Anyway, well, we've now massively, as we always do,
Yeah,
dated this commentary.
our short preamble didn't work out so
This
well.
is what happens when I skip a week for Captain Logan show.
Exactly.
Then this show just becomes that.
This is
Kind of
what
just...
happens when you find a stranger in the Alps. Okay, let's do this.
All right, here we go. Let me pull up my clock real quick. And away we go. Austin, are you ready, sir?
Yep.
All right, everybody, please press play right now.
So I really like this movie, but I'm gonna throw out a negative right away just because it's where we're starting.
Sure.
I don't like this opening.
Okay, what don't you care for with it?
I don't like that we start in present day. I think we should start in World War II. I'm even kind of mixed about ending on present day, to be honest. I like the ending of this movie, but part of me does wonder if we maybe should have left it for the next one.
Interesting.
But I do like the ending in this movie. Like I said, it's just a questioning thing. I don't like this opening. I think this opening should be cut.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a strong opinion about that. In the theater, what impressed me was that we didn't wind up back here halfway through. I like that you kind of forget about it. Like, I sort of like the book ending of it.
Yeah, but like part of that just makes it feel more superfluous to me, where it's like you get to the end and it's like, oh yeah, like it opened like that. Like, I don't know.
Why does that
it's
make
just
it
so unnecessary.
Why does that make it superfluous, though?
Just because I already don't think it's necessary, so the fact that it kind of also relies on you to have forgotten that this is how it opened, I think makes it feel worse.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always saw it as more obligatory than anything.
But I kind of feel like they're maybe planning their stuff ahead, and they're like, instead of starting back, like we have to tie it into we're always moving forward with this universe.
Yeah. Well, and I know you're a big stickler for, well, I mean, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think you're sort of a big stickler for, let's not put the world building to, like, in everybody's face, where it's more about these are all interconnected than it is the story you're looking at.
Yeah,
and
well,
I think these early movies do a better job of having their cake and eating it too, and integrating that into real stories than some later stuff does. But like if that's the thing that irritates you about it, I can kind of understand that. I mean, that was the Iron Man 2 problem for me, was it was way too Avengers is coming.
But also, like, I don't know, I feel like that ending maybe works. I mean, that ending's not great, as we'll talk about, but I feel like it's maybe a little bit better if you don't have this, because for a general audience, you're not thinking like, oh, we have to get to present day by the end.
That's true, and also when you get to the end, if you are thinking about this opening, it's maybe arguably more obvious what's going on when Cap wakes up in that hospital room, and it will turn out that it's present day, and you can maybe shock the audience a little bit more with it if you don't have this opening. But the other thing is, I've never really thought that much about it, but I guess you're right. Like, this also kind of watches like an after credit scene for a different movie. Like, you're not going to shock anybody for seeing the Captain America show. This is what we came to see.
This is the after credit scene in Thor, to be like, look, Captain America's coming.
Yeah, and then of course we did that with the hammer also.
Yeah,
so you could have done both. Here's the hammer, here's the shield.
Yeah, exactly. And I really love cold opens, but it makes it more awkward because we then cut from this to a second cold open.
No, that's absolutely right. Well, and also there's no framing device or anything. It's just, look, the shield, and then 1942. Like, I don't mean that
the movie has actually begun. And
I don't mean that I needed something.
This opens is a better opening.
Yeah, I don't mean that I needed something cutesy with, like a 90-year-old Peggy Carter, like Titanic, explaining this movie to somebody or something like that. But I don't know, something that connects it better, makes it more cohesive, maybe.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so I guess I'll stick by what I said a minute ago and say I don't mind the idea of opening in present day, but it could have been handled better.
yeah, possibly. This is just also like this is the movie is actually beginning now.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think I some of why they're doing that. I love the introduction to the Hydra symbol being
Oh
on
yeah,
his
and I love
car.
this car.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
And let me just back up for a second and say one of the things I really like about this movie is that it's so stylishly comic book movie, and in this universe, like it gives the MCU this flavor that it desperately needs by this point.
Hmm. Yeah, it's still riding a line. Like we're inching it forward as the MCU goes along. We're like, this
Yeah.
is a little bit more comic booky than we have been. It won't be as much as we will get later.
No, that's true, and it still feels more like grounded, if you like, or sort of rooted in reality than uh, like a Batman '89 or something, and then a lot of us probably wanted for these movies. But I guess my point is, I just really appreciate we've got a fun, over the top, straight up evil villain that gets to ride around in a cool car. Like I like how toyetic this movie is,
Hmm.
and the Iron Man suits are fun to play with and stuff. Don't get me wrong, but this is up to this point arguably the most toyetic of these.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
You
I
got
mean,
some fun, cool toys to play with.
and I mean, Iron Man is obviously designed in a way to, take Iron Man and say, what would that look like in the real world? I don't know that they're necessarily really thinking about that with the Red Skull design. That's just Red Skull. Eyebrows aren't as pronounced, but
No, that's true,
it's still just Red Skull.
but
The Captain America
his
suit is much more that, like, how do we make this work, in a realistic way, but not as bad as say like the Nolan Batman movies. Like it still is like a Captain America costume.
it also still looks like a cool toy.
Hmm.
That's the thing, is it looks like a GI Joe or something.
Oh, there's so much GI Joe in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, well, first of all, the Red Skull. To your point, Red Skull's outfit also looks like something out of a Saturday morning cartoon, and that makes me very happy. But for whatever reason, I can't really explain this. The line from Hugo Weaving that has always stuck with me the most is just the way he says "treasure room." Odin's treasure room. It's like
Yeah, and this
more
is like the
syllables
most
than it should
Indiana
be. It's great.
Jonesy scene in this movie, and I think we already had it. The line that he has where he's like, Hitler's been digging off in the I forget where it is. He's like on the other side of the world digging, and which is what I think might be a Raiders reference, but I don't know. That could just be like an actual reference to Hitler looking for artifacts.
Yeah, because we know that's true.
Yeah, exactly. But like there is definitely inspiration from that in this movie, so I could see it either way.
And not to get too ahead of ourselves, but I really like the distinction between what Red Skull is after and what Hitler and the Nazis are after. Like the difference, like the ideological versus just like straight up power mad.
I do wish we had a little bit more of that, but I do like what is here. Like it's more of I want more because I like what's here.
More of what?
Like more of that distinction because I do feel like this movie does kind of write out the Nazis and that we don't really see them outside of being spoken about.
Yeah, I totally agree with you with that. But that's also part of the comic bookiness that I think is cool. That it's that it hones in on the Hydra as its own villain.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I just think you could have had a better breakdown of like this is the Nazis, this is Hydra, and like seeing kind of the inner workings of them a little bit more than we do.
yeah, I totally agree with that.
That's all I mean. Like
Well,
I like
it's kind of
I
just
think you
explained
could
in
have-
passing.
Yeah, exactly. I would like a few more scenes with that.
But I think that's a cool choice. I mean, as much as I like that Red Skull is as flat out evil as he is, I think both he and Steve Rogers could use some fleshing out in backgrounds. I could see the argument that it's not necessary. Like, there's a nice simplicity with this movie that is refreshing going back to it now.
Yeah.
Especially in the kind of jokes you were making at the start about movie length now. But you've got a Steve Rogers that is a good man because he's a good man, and you have a Red Skull who's evil because he's evil,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't need flashbacks. I didn't need, a lot of scenes about how Red Skull grew up or how Steve Rogers grew up. It is a little odd that we don't get one mention whatsoever through this entire movie about Steve Rogers' parents. We don't know anything about his upbringing.
Yeah, I think what you need is say like a Nazi character that Red Skull can like kind of report to through some of this movie, and like they can have some scenes together, and you need more scenes of Steve and Bucky together.
You need more scenes with Steve and Bucky for lots of reasons.
Yeah. But like I'm thinking you can get some of what you're saying just by having those two talking.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. When you get to Winter Soldier, there are, and I've always said this, but there are absolutely members of the audience that are supposed to be shocked and dismayed when Steve Rogers' childhood friend shows up in present day, and a lot of that audience did not remember that character because he doesn't get enough screen time here. Now, having said that, retroactively going back to it, because we're all so familiar with this character and this actor now, he jumps out at me in a way he didn't used to. And so now it almost feels like he has enough screen time, but it didn't back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I saw this around when we knew Winter Soldier was coming, so it's hard for me to judge that because I went in knowing that this character was coming back. But he could use a couple more scenes at the very least.
I think
Then he could use like a better final scene.
I think this movie does a really good job of updating things intelligently in ways that a lot of earlier superhero movies did not manage it. Like, this does a much better job of aging up the kid sidekick than, say, Batman Forever did.
Yeah, for sure. I
Like-
mean, it helps that they're in a war, so like it makes more sense than him running around with a kid.
No,
And
that's true.
the
It's
Human
it's
Torch.
kind of cheating to just do it more realistically, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
But-
there are like 15 different topics I want to jump onto as we're looking at this scene. So I guess the first place I'll go is isn't it cool the way in which this movie is already kind of the culmination of everything you've seen so far, but
I was just about to bring that up. I think the world building in this is genuinely pretty good.
it's really
Like,
good.
we had the Odin thing in the. I almost said the first scene. It's not the first scene, but in that first real scene of the movie, and then the Stark stuff I also think works, where we go back to the Stark Expo from Iron Man 2, and then obviously Howard Stark will be a supporting character throughout. But
Yeah, and Howard Stark helps introduce some kind of thematic and like yin yang character stuff between Cap and Tony.
yeah,
And so I really like his presence here. It doesn't feel arbitrary. Like, he's
it
a
helps
good.
that we also knew he was involved with this stuff too.
He's a good plot device
Mm-hmm.
in just having somebody that can do all the futuristic tech.
Yeah.
But he's more than that. And yeah, I was gonna say that we've already kind of established that to some degree. Obviously, the Stark Expo is in Iron Man 2 and is building on that whole thing. That expo also has always reminded me of the world of the future from Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So every time I see that scene, I'm goddamn welcome Gotham to the future.
They should have had, instead of
head.
just standing there, they should have had the Human Torch like cutting on a cutting board. That'd have been great.
Oh my god, that'd be great. Meatloaf for dinner again.
That, and it's just great that we had a cameo of the original Human Torch in a new Marvel film where we recast Chris Evans.
I think the hover car that Stark has there is driven by Coulson and the pilot for Agents of Shield, or a really
Yeah,
similar one.
it's at least a very similar one, but it has like repulsor wheels.
And then that got a pop figure. But I digress.
Yeah, I think that's like a reoccurring thing in that show.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
so,
so
sorry, go ahead.
how do you feel about the, especially going back to it now almost 15 years later? We're going into the 15th anniversary next year, I guess. But how do you feel about how wimpy Steve Rogers looks now? Like that effect.
We are on the exact same wavelength tonight because that's exactly what I was about to bring up next again. um, I've always thought he looked weird, but there's moments where I think the effect looks pretty good, and then other moments where I think it looks really uncanny. Uh, but I feel like that's just the effects work in this movie altogether. Like a
Yeah.
lot of them walking around the Stark Expo there is very green screen heavy.
No, you're right. The wimpy Steve Rogers effect is indicative of just the visual effects throughout the whole movie, and
Yeah.
the difference between that and the green screen thing is, I'm on the fence. Like, I'm a little wishy-washy about the green screen thing because I in a lot of places I like how heightened it looks, and I'm okay with it looking kind of fake. Like,
Mhm.
it's kind of out there and very matte painting-y. And then there's places, especially in the third act, where it doesn't look like intentional fake matte painting, like a thing uh, that you almost don't want to look real. It just looks bad. And
Yeah.
with the Steve Rogers effect, he's like, especially at that point, I'm not sure how else you do it, but it's weird how sometimes I'm buying it, sometimes I'm not, but it doesn't have that stylistic thing. I need to believe that.
Mhm.
And I need it to not look like somebody's head superimposed on somebody else's body. And some of the problem with it is just what foot you get off on with it, like your first impression. Because if you buy it when you first see it, or you're not paying that much attention to it, you're probably okay with it the rest of the movie. If you think it looks like a goofy deep fake when you first see it, you're out the rest of the time.
Yeah, because that's a bit like that's kind of what I have is it looks like a deep fake, but I don't know it because I agree. Like the only other way to do it would be to recast, which would maybe be strange. Like to have like cast a smaller Steve Rogers. I don't know. It doesn't kill the movie for me, but it definitely looks strange.
I will say I don't think it looks any worse than some of the really bad de-aging effects we get later, but we also have to
Yeah.
live with it longer than we do most of those.
Hmm.
That's part of the issue. Now, I think his performance with it is really good.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of that, like having to live with it, I don't have the Captain Marvel Sam Jackson thing where I'm like, oh, you're a 20-year-old man who moves like a 70-year-old, because they do have a younger actor that they're putting his head on, or not a younger actor, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A smaller actor.
Yes, small
Maybe he
younger
was
people
younger,
are
I don't
always
know.
smaller.
There's the
Do,
Arnim Zola shot.
do you? I was going to ask you if you like that, the kind of references we get to what Zola is supposed to look like in the comics, because we never full on actually do that with him. But I think the computer thing that we do with him in Winter Soldier is just as fun. So I'm kind of fine with the fact that we never do that. But I like the little homages to it.
No, I agree, and I like the computer thing.
Sometimes I mean, it's case by case, right? Sometimes that feels really lame, where it's like you're just giving us this for the audience that's familiar, because you're never going to actually give them what they want, and so you know, so it feels really lame to people sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we get very montage.
It's almost a
heavy.
slap in the face, but I don't
Just
have
pretend
that with this.
we get very montage heavy later on. Just pretend that the movie game happens between the montage, because you get to fight him in the mech suit in that.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think he's like the main boss because it's like a in between quill. It's not a retelling of this.
Now, there is a way that they could have remedied uh, that effect that we've not talked about, the wimpy Steve Rogers thing,
Hmm.
and that is just cast Christian Bale in the first place. That would have done it.
There you go. He would have taken like 20 years off his life to play little Steve
And
Rogers.
then to build up to Captain America,
Yeah, exactly.
what would it have been like to be on the set watching super buff Chris Evans pretending to be scrawny?
Oh, I have to imagine it would be really funny.
It must have been hilarious.
It'll be like that clip of Dave Bautista petting Sean Gunn from the first Guardians movie, where it's like you're just watching a man petting another man. It'd be amusing like that.
This movie is, I think, perfectly cast across the board.
Yeah, I really like the cast in this.
Particularly the comic characters that I went in already really familiar with, where it, like, I was never a big Captain America person, but even me, like, being a little bit familiar with Red Skull and Zola, I felt like fans were being kind of spoiled with those casting choices, where they seemed just kind of perfect, like the only person you should put in those roles.
Yeah, I mean, I even like the guy who plays Dum Dum Dugan. I wish he got to do more.
Yeah, that one's hard for me to look at now.
Oh yeah, because he's Damien Dark.
He's Damien
right?
Dark.
Yeah.
Who's one of the worst characters in the CW DC shows.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, one of the things with this movie is I wish that we did other films kind of fleshing some of this stuff out, where we got to see some of those characters a little bit more.
I do too, although I will say that even going back to this, the Howling Commandos feel a little bit more present to me than they did before we had more movies.
Yeah, I've always liked the Howling Commandos in this. That's why I wish they got more to do.
But I wish they had more to do, yeah. But I mean,
I live in that same place for me as the Warriors 3, where
yes.
I feel like it sometimes gets exaggerated how little they have to do, in the first Thor and in this, but they also don't get like a ton to do.
So I don't know what Tommy Lee Jones is doing in this movie, but he really elevates it. I'm so glad he's here. He's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no kidding.
He's a really endearing presence in this.
He's basically just a character actor in this. Like, this is a nothing part, and we bring him in to elevate it.
Well, what's interesting is I listened to the director commentary, and Johnston talks about how he was only on set for a few days, but because his scenes are spread out so much, he's a real presence in the movie, and you'd never guess just how little he worked on it.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So I don't know what it, I don't know how hard it was to get the logistics of that worked out, like that schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I didn't realize this until I listened to that director's commentary, but this is an added reshoot scene that they did real late, like at the 11th hour.
Oh, weird. This feels like a really important moment.
I think so too, and I'm so glad we have it. But apparently this was added just so that we had a bit with Steve Rogers using his brain in some way.
Yeah, you kind of need that.
I think it foreshadows. We haven't talked enough about story yet. I feel like it foreshadows Steve going to rescue the Howling Commandos really well, because it demonstrates that he always does the right thing before he follows orders, and those two things are not always the same thing.
Yeah, and that's part of why he is, the right candidate for the job.
I mean, I guess, and what I mean is, like, that's a place where he's cheating to get the job done. I guess you could argue that he cheated to follow orders. Okay, like, if you really overthink it, it's not a perfect metaphor for what he does later, but...
I mean, I think you maybe have an argument that it's like, oh, he's somebody who, cheats to get their way. If it's just that scene, like, it's just the fact that it's mixed in with everything else that doesn't play as that way.
Yeah, well,
but you could definitely do exactly that scene to show a character as, like, somebody that's kind of self-interested.
Yeah, that's true. With this, once you get, and I like that this scene is immediately after that with the grenade, because it's
Yeah,
also about what's at stake. Like he's got his priorities in check. He can
exactly.
see things relative to other things.
Hmm.
Let me read these super chats real quick. Chewbacca's
Yeah,
lover $2 super chat. Brad Pitt was supposed to be Cap in the late '90s. I don't remember hearing that. That seems like a pretty obvious choice though, so that's not surprising.
yeah, I've heard that before.
This is one of those movies that was in development hell for a really long time. They were trying to get it together all the way back to '97,
Hmm.
and it sounds like it was a project being developed pretty separate from Iron Man, and they weren't necessarily supposed to be in the same continuity until Marvel Studios decided to kind of go off on its own.
Well, and I know it was also a fight to get this to be a World War II film.
Well, and apparently Feige originally wanted it to be kind of like the 1990 Captain America movie and what I was talking about earlier, where half of it would take place in the present day.
Oh, okay. I knew someone did. I wasn't sure if it was the infamous creative committee or if it was him or Perlmutter or like who it
What I
was.
read was that that's what Feige wanted initially.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a good thing they backed down on that.
Yeah, I think this movie is even a lot better just in sequence when you go see it in the theater because it comes right after Thor.
Hmm.
Because it does a lot of the things that I think Thor ought to have.
Well, because Thor is what you're describing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I and a million other people have always said that should have majoritively taken place on Asgard.
Hmm. Here's a question
We should
for
have
you.
really explored that. And I'm with you. It'd be nice if we fleshed out the World War II stuff even more than we do, but it is just the correct move to have as much of it take place here. I've heard people say even it would have been nice to get a whole trilogy set in World War II, and that's maybe asking a little bit too much.
I think that's like perfect world. You get a World War II trilogy and a modern day trilogy for Cap, but like you said, that's probably asking for too much. But like, if everything could be perfect, then yes.
I think the best of both worlds for that would have been because I got to be honest with you, the probably the biggest disappointment for me with this movie is
Mhm.
that we typically get rid of Red Skull at the end. And
Yeah.
and yes, it would have been very easy to contrive a way to bring him back with the way he gets disappeared with the cosmic cube,
Mhm.
because even in the theater, I and again a million other people thought, well, he's not actually dead. He's not disintegrated. It looks like he's being transported somewhere. When like space opens above us and everything. But of course, we know how everything worked out, and we don't get to him again until Infinity War, and he's kind of a different character.
But I've
Uh,
always thought he should have been the villain in Winter Soldier. Uh, whether like Robert Redford is Red Skull, or you just go a different
That's
direction.
what I was going to say. Is the best of both worlds would have been we
Mhm.
continued this narrative into the present day with these guys.
Yeah, no, I think we should have done that. I think that's a missed opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. And what's interesting is you could have done it through the cosmic cube. Like you
Mhm.
could have had uh, Avengers happen exactly the way it does, and then something at the end of that movie, like Red Skull shows up right at the end in an after credits or is part of the third act or something, and then continues on in a second Captain America movie because this was, as we were talking about earlier, setting up Avengers, and so you were always going to have Avengers between those two movies.
See, and I think you could have had something where you find out that he did manage to get back after Cap froze, and like he is that Robert Redford thing where he's like been like in the government helping to see Hydra,
And that's the reason Hydra takes over. That would have been great,
both him
absolutely.
and Zola. Yeah,
Or he's like pulling Red for strings, or
yeah, you could have done that too.
like you're right. He could have just been wearing a Robert Redford mask, or Redford could have been like a robot. Like there's all kinds of fun stuff you could
Part
have
of it
done.
is I just want to see Robert Redford rip off his face, like Hugo Weaving
Well,
does.
considering Weaving wasn't interested in coming back, as long as Redford could do a decent German accent,
He's had decades to practice.
he could still play it. This is one of my favorite scenes. I was so
Yeah,
impressed with it in the theater for not showing us the painting.
I agree.
This is one of the best build-ups in a movie to what does your villain look like, particularly because he's a presence from the very beginning. Like, he's the first character we really introduce, and yet we haven't seen him in all of his supervillain glory yet. I also think the makeup job on Weaving's face to look like a mask over the Red Skull is really well handled.
Yeah, it does look really good. Also, to kind of break down why it won't work later on, I think part of what's cool about his lair here is that it's a Bond villain lair, and then when you get out into the hangar spot, you don't have like the fully built set that we would have had in a Bond movie, and it's like the really crappy green screen. And granted, they are not entirely made of money yet, but
Yes.
that is something that's kind of holding them back.
Another fun comic booky thing here is uh, the like secretive location of where the Super Soldier Project is taking place.
Hmm.
Like, I love all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, where it's like hidden underneath a building.
Yeah,
It's
and
classic. You got to do that.
you got to do that, and you've got the uh, like elderly woman with the machine gun. Like, it's fantastic.
It doesn't have the amazing moment from the '90s film where the guy goes to shake his hands and then screams "Heil Hitler" and shoots him, but it's still pretty great.
I think the scene with him and Haley Atwell in the car there is really important for their relationship. And I've got issues with their relationship, of course. And like retroactively, I think a lot of it actually watches better than it does at first because it watched a little bit too typical for me in the theater. And it oddly gets kind of fleshed out retroactively, even though they don't get screen time together, which is interesting.
Yeah, they have like 2 scenes after this film.
But what I like about that is that we can be sure definitively from the start that she is not interested in him because he's the super soldier.
Hmm.
Like, she's interested in him for the reasons he becomes the super soldier, and that's a really important distinction. Like, if he knew how, because that whole scene is about how he's not had experience with women, he doesn't believe in himself enough to even like try to pursue women. If he was more self-confident, I could see her dating him even before he became the super soldier. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, so it's not as superficial, especially because you also have that paralleled with like a bunch of other women that are like that.
Yeah, exactly. I also love just in general the compare and contrast with this movie to Iron Man. And I think Iron Man at the end of the day is a smidge better than this movie.
Hmm.
Just story quality wise. And they both kind of degenerate in certain ways in the third act, but I think even in that department, I think Iron Man inches this one out a little bit.
No, because
I think I buy its ending more.
Iron Man's at least fun in the way like it looks really good with some of that action stuff, even though it degenerates a little bit. Well, this looks pretty rough by the end, and just
They're
production
wonderful
overall, Iron
companion
Man looks a lot
pieces.
better.
Like, I've never sat down and watched them back to back, but I kind of want to.
Hmm.
Because you have the obvious. I mean, it goes without saying the obvious mirror character arcs with the guy that is a narcissist and selfish and has to learn to become selfless, and the guy who is selfless in the first place. But I also like just all the parallels in their origins, where you've got Erskine versus what's the name of the guy in the cave? Say that again.
Jensen.
Yinsen, thank you. And it's interesting comparing those guys because you have the one that picks your hero because he has what Yinsen helps Tony Stark to get
Hmm.
in his movie.
No, that's very true.
I also wonder if this had somehow come first, how Iron Man plays in comparison to it. Like, was this the better order to get those character arcs in? I wonder. Like, probably.
Yeah, I also don't know that the MCU takes off as much as it does if this is first.
Oh no, probably not. I mean, that probably wouldn't have been smart, just
Hmm.
from a business perspective. But just, I don't know.
Just character wise,
I
like
always
story
think it's,
wise.
yeah, just perspectives are interesting. Like, I wonder if I would appreciate these characters the same way if I had gotten the more altruistic guy first.
Yeah, I wonder.
Because in a weird way, the modern one, at least theoretically, seems more relatable just because Tony Stark is so deeply flawed, and that's like what you would expect a hero to be like. Like that's the Marvel method guy, and this
Hmm.
is like a golden age character that's brought into Marvel. You sort of see Timely become Marvel in this movie,
Hmm.
or
That's very true.
between this and Avengers.
Yeah, and especially between this and Winter Soldier.
It's also cool seeing again and comparing them, the guy that's forced by terrorists to build a suit to get himself out of a situation versus Steve Rogers, who is completely complicit in his own origin. And Johnston talks in the commentary a little bit about being conscious in trying to separate this from Weapon X.
Oh, okay.
Be,
Interesting.
because so you wanted to make sure that it didn't look too like unfriendly and sterile and all of
Yeah.
that, because which is really smart, and they achieved that certainly,
Hmm.
where
No, it absolutely
he has
does.
to go through an absolute ordeal here, and it seems like a horrible thing to have to go through, but it's, again, he's entirely complicit in it, and the people doing it to him or with him, or however you want to look at it, don't feel like horrible people, even though there are things that Erskine is not telling him about.
Well, Stark isn't in this moment saying, "Okay, now we have to wipe his brain."
His memories won't grow back.
I've got vibranium bullets.
So everything about this feels as altruistic as it possibly can in being an ill-advised uh, science experiment done on a human being. Ill-advised genetic engineering.
It's the best you can make that look.
And then what gives it some credibility is that immediately after that, once they can't replicate it, the government has no idea what to do with him, and we get some really nice social commentary or satire, if you like, about government bureaucracy.
Well, and that's the best section of this movie, like by far, is everything with that.
It feels maybe a tad rose tinted glasses right before that, and then suddenly we start to the cynicism creeps in a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And then,
Which is smart with the world building, because this government eventually, like the United States government in this Marvel universe, has to eventually become the one that makes all the shady mistakes that Shield makes by Avengers,
hmm
and so they cannot be perfect now.
yeah, and I mean, I think it's important with Captain America to see that he wasn't like a lapdog in the first place, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and he feels that way sometimes in the comics. Like,
Hmm
this is one of their better reinventions of a character. I think a lot of people came to really love Captain America, even comic people that just couldn't get into him in the comics.
Well, I do feel like with their Captain America, we do see Kevin Feige's love for Superman more than you really get in the comic book version.
That's absolutely right. And it works. Like for me, that's what that character should be like, and that's not just because this worked. Like that's kind of what I always wanted growing up.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean this trilogy really carried the torch that Superman dropped.
Yes.
You know.
Well, I've said that forever too. That to me, Marvel had to varying degrees of success. Three Supermans that were better than Superman has been or had been in decades.
Hmm.
Between Captain America and then Luke Cage and Black Panther.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really thought of that with Black Panther, but with Luke Cage, definitely. Luke Cage even has his own Lex Luthor in that show, at least for the first half of the season.
Yeah, I always felt that way with Black Panther just because of how principled he is.
Hmm. That's fair.
So, do you like all of the foreshadowing for the Shield, or
I was
is it
about to
too
ask you that
is it
too.
too silly?
Do you think it's maybe too much that we do it a few times, or do you think this movie just has really good setup and payoff? Because it's not just the Shield; like we do it with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Again, case by case. Like there are lesser movies that have done exactly these things where I don't feel like I'm being fair and complaining about it in other things, but not this one. But it works for me with this. I think some of it is that it doesn't feel too shoved in your face. Like it's a couple seconds and we move on.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense in this moment that he would grab that to protect himself.
And there's a progression
It's
for
maybe
it,
silly
right?
that it has the star on it.
Well, but I was gonna say that's actually what I like about it, where like he picks up a trash can lid and it's a circle, but it doesn't have a star, and then he picks up a door that's not a circle, but it has a star, and then later finally we'll actually get the shield.
Well, that's like more like the classic shield shape, which I know we'll
That's right.
get later on. But
I think what's sillier than either of those things is the fact that Howard Stark took the only vibranium they had and just made a metal circle out of it.
yeah, this is a nice little moment that we don't really get as much anymore, where he has like a little moment with this kid where he goes to save him and he's okay.
Yeah, good call. Just to give us these little examples of again what his priorities are.
Yeah, and
Uh,
just like letting the people of the world be people.
we talked over the speaking of toyetic, this thing.
Yeah, this is a GI Joe vehicle.
um,
This
Erskine.
guy is also not Peter Serafinowicz.
No, he's not. That's true. But you're saying he sort of looks like him.
Yeah, he's dollar store Serafinowicz.
We talked over Erskine driving a thing way above his pay grade. Earlier we talked over Erskine's dialogue exchange with Steve with the alcohol, but I've always really loved that scene.
Hmm. Yeah, I really like that moment too. The wait
Partly
a minute,
because
you can't have fluids.
I was gonna say it's a really good breakdown, and it's really simple. I love how not overwritten it is about why Erskine chose him. Like it's really good exposition. So it's like it tells you everything you need to know about his character and why Steve was chosen. But it also in a really simple bite-sized way tells you this is how the super soldier serum works, and they were smart to pick Steve Rogers because it's going to exaggerate everything he had in him already, and so that's supposed to explain Red Skull. But again, I still wish I knew a little bit about where Red Skull came from. And then you get that wonderful levity right after that of well I don't have procedure tomorrow. It's great.
Yeah, and I mean Stanley Tucci's the man. Like he really raises that character up.
It's also interesting that there's a little bit of moral ambiguity to that character.
Hmm.
And so he understands Steve Rogers, maybe partly because he wishes he could be him and knows that he's not.
Hmm. But I also just like, that he's very much that kind of defected Nazi scientist type thing, where
Yeah.
he did originally work for these guys and now he's defected.
Well, I like him in comparison to Zola, who could be a defecting
I
Nazi
mean, he is a
scientist
little defective.
as well when he gets picked up. And the difference is, Erskine is only I only call him morally ambiguous in what he leaves out, in what he's not telling Steve Rogers, that he is partly responsible for creating the Red Skull,
Hmm.
but his heart is in the right place, especially certainly after that. And then Zola, I you actually see a little bit of humanity in him here and there, where he doesn't like how far Red Skull goes in the way he uses POWs and in just how vicious he is. Like, he's uncomfortable in this scene,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, he can live with he's not uh, a true believer in the Nazi cause, but and neither is Red Skull really, but for different, more nefarious reasons. But then when when it all comes down to it, you realize that Zola can live with all of that if only he gets to take his toy designs and see them, realized.
Hmm. Do you think he's maybe a little rewritten by Winter Soldier, where we find out that he was like fully torturing? Like, I guess he is doing a little bit of that in this, but we don't really get like a good look at it.
This did have me wanting to rewatch Winter Soldier because it's been a while, and I had that thought through this, Austin, where I was like, I don't know if Zola is the same character by then.
Hmm. I mean, it is decades later. Like, I could maybe buy that he eventually, grew a little darker.
Well, because he seems more in. I'm hesitating because it's been a while, but he seems a little bit more indoctrinated in the Hydra hype at that point.
Well, he's just like a lot more nefarious and evil by Winter Soldier. While here, he is, but like he's also very meek and nervous, and like you said, like he's uncomfortable when they're killing those guys.
Yeah, well, and he's like, look, these
He's at
later
the very
on,
least a lot darker in
later
Winter
on with the
Soldier.
POWs, he's like, these workers can't, handle everything you're putting them through. And Red Skull's like, well, there's always more workers,
Hmm.
which is the Hydra thing.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I think it's also kind of interesting that neither of those guys is a real believer in the cause, but they have different in the Nazi cause.
Hmm.
Uh, but they have different motivations.
Yeah, and I like that. That's like part of why I wish there was a little bit more with like actual Nazis in this to really differentiate them.
So yeah, one of the things that makes Steve so endearing in this, and relatable, because it's difficult, of course, to make a Superman like character that always does the right thing relatable, is the one step forward and two steps back of it. The fact that, like, when he starts, he's trying to get into the army, and he's too scrawny and sickly, and shouldn't be able to get in. And then when he finally does, and he's given superpowers, then he just becomes an action figure, and it's embarrassing. And so I think there's this really great approach here where we don't have to make him this deeply flawed and jaded character in order to still see ourselves in him.
Hmm. No, I love that they kind of tackled the kind of propaganda side of 40s comics, and this is just by far the best sequence of the movie for me. This is so great, and we get the Hitler punch. I also like that you slowly see him uh like growing through this, where when he comes out there, he's reading his lines, and then we see him get more comfortable and then less comfortable. He gets his own little double character arc in this little montage.
Yeah, no, that's true. And this movie is brilliant with its montages.
Yeah, it does a really good job with that.
And you hear Johnston in his commentary a little bit frustrated with the necessity of so much montage. Like, he sounded like he was really worried about it. Where he's like, I don't want to rely this much on montage. And when you get to the big second montage, a lot of the stuff that they shot for that were supposed to be individual scenes.
Oh, okay, I've always wondered that, because we do montage a lot of his war experience, which is part of why I always felt like we were kind of setting seeds that we could maybe flesh out a little bit more later on, but never really did.
No, I like your point about his having kind of a mini character arc through this, because it's interesting that as he gets more comfortable with his role here and starts, again, one step forward and two steps back, he starts to kind of see his role in this, that this might not just be, a pointless, pathetic thing, and maybe he's not making a difference the way he wanted to, but he's finding a sense of identity in it. And then that all gets deflated after this, and his again, I don't think he's jaded, but like his saddest, most defeated moment is right after this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and from his perspective at this point, like, he is making a difference. Like, he's maybe getting more people to join the war effort. Like, it's not what he had in mind, but like he's still doing something for the war, and then in a minute he's going to find out he's not. That's also, I really like that shot where you have the shield in the arena that he's playing in.
Yeah, and that's a special effect shot that actually looks really good, because a lot of those elements are composited together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would have to be. Yeah.
The only thing that was really there, if I'm remembering Johnston talking about this properly, is him standing there, and they've of course got the bike on ropes.
Oh, okay.
He's holding up. Was it a bike or a helicopter? I can't even remember now.
Oh, it was a bike.
I think it was a bike.
We'll get the helicopter in Civil War.
I'm watching it, but I'm also looking at comments. And
you're just too distracted by his awesome pirate boots.
Exactly.
We got straight up the Cap costume, and it looks perfect.
So I was gonna say there's so much utility in that whole sequence.
Mm-hmm.
In that it progresses the story forward. It gives us, like I said, that satire about bureaucracy, and it lets us have the original Captain America costume and the Hitler punch and all the Golden Age stuff. Like it's really cool, the blend of, if you like fan service with actually progressing narrative.
Yeah, and people in the chat are saying that the montages kind of kill the second half, make the film feel a little rushed by the end. I agree with that in the back half. I think this one works really well. Once we're doing like the combat montage, it definitely feels a little rushed.
Yeah, I think that's because it's hard to imagine what compelling story would be told there that wouldn't just bog the whole thing down. Where when you get to the montages in the second part, you're thinking, well, I kind of want to see Captain America fight in the war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why what I mean by, like, it feels like we're kind of setting pieces that we can maybe flesh out later.
Yeah.
Where it's like he fought like quite a bit in the war. It's not just the 90s movie thing where he gets his powers, we drop him off, and he gets frozen.
But that's what I was going to say, is at least it's as much as it would have been nice to see some of that, the story that this movie is telling doesn't require us to see all of that, and I'm glad that at least we know it happened. I'm glad there's a time jump. It's not the Dark Knight Rises thing where Batman fought two villains in a few months, and then we skip 8 years and he fights one more and he's done. It doesn't feel like that. There's actually some history. The 1990 Captain America thing is insane.
Hmm.
And not just because he has plastic ears, but because he goes and fights Red Skull one time, gets strapped to a rocket, and then that's it. He's in present day.
And that's what he gets. They didn't train him. They were like, "You have powers now. Good luck."
I also think we're really lucky that this movie was made when it was, Austin, because this is really the tail end of a period where, especially in movies, bringing this character back from the 40s to present day really works all that well. Like, we're now finally to a point where there's almost nobody left living
Hmm.
that was in that war.
No, that's very true. I mean, also I don't think we ever really did enough with that stuff. Like I really need a sense of status quo for Captain America once he gets to present day, and we never get that in the MCU. But
Yeah, that's fair.
we at least deal with that to some degree with Peggy.
That's true. And there's still compelling things to do, of course, with the Captain America that it comes so much later that everybody is gone.
Hmm.
But it feels more authentic to original Marvel comics that the world he knew is at least not completely gone. Um
Yeah, 'cause originally he's gone for probably like less than 20 years at
yeah,
that point.
exactly.
It's kind of funny when you think about it.
Yeah, the time dilation wasn't that much more than in like Flight of the Navigator, which I think had like a 10-year time jump. But yeah, I also think that we're lucky, and this might sound like kind of a cynical or negative point, but it's also lucky to me that this comes out in 2010 and not a whole lot later, because there's already this kind of fine needle that's having to be threaded in how do you put out a movie about such a uh, like blatantly patriotic character and expect people to go see it in a world where a lot of people at this point were feeling kind of anti-America and like can you sell this overseas,
Hmm.
um and all the reasons that even Superman was feeling more and more like a hard sell to people, and I think it's even harder to do now.
Yeah, that stuff I do think is still toned down a little bit, especially in marketing. But
No, it's
I mean,
absolutely
he's still
toned
Captain
down. I'm just saying I
America.
think it's even harder now.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, this is after GI Joe, was brought back in movies, and we couldn't have the real American hero thing.
I personally think it's impressive the way Captain America's value set and patriotism and all of that is held intact, but the movie, the actual story it's telling is universal enough that it was sellable to other markets, and
Mhm.
that they didn't have to sell it as a super patriotic thing. But you could also look at it that way if you wanted to. Like, I don't even feel like it's wishy washy about it. I think it just works for different audiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always been really impressed with it for that.
I always thought it was weird he has a parachute there. Both because we will later on establish he doesn't need one, but also he's more likely to get shot down that way.
Yeah. No, since it had been a while since I'd seen this, watching this last week for this, I was watching for that. I was like, wait a minute, does he bring a parachute out? I can't even remember. And then he did, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he does. But then I also like the contrast of that to what he does in Winter Soldier, because by then he's really experienced.
Well, yeah, this is just his first
This
time, so
Captain
that is
America's never
fair.
done anything like that.
Well, he also can't land on his head because I'm pretty sure that's not a real helmet. It was just like the helmet that like the line dancers were wearing.
Yeah, that's a good point. That shield's not going to do all that much for him either. It's made of wood.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I also like that we don't go too over the top with, uh, he's clumsy and doesn't know what he's doing with his powers yet, but we do address that. So like when he first uh, becomes a super soldier and he's running down the street, he's crashing into windows and stuff. Like, I'm glad we have that stuff, but I'm also glad that it's not played too much for comedy. And we get past it pretty quick without seeming too unrealistic about it. Like, I don't feel like he suddenly seems too good at everything.
No, that moment's more like, a baby deer learning to walk for the first time. Like, it's like watching that.
Yeah, and not knowing your own strength, because how could you?
Yeah, exactly. Now we're just in Wolfenstein.
We haven't talked about the
How is this not a video game? Just this section.
It should
this
be.
Is the Arkham to Captain America.
Well,
right?
the game they made for this was kind of Arkham based, though.
Yeah, but I just mean like this specifically, like a oh my god, I just said it.
Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thing where it's like return to Castle Red Skull.
I I never played that, but I always thought, well, Wolfenstein or the Captain America game. But I was gonna say that Captain America game they made. I never played that, but I always thought the idea of having a Captain America game just based all in a bunker like Arkham was a really cool notion. I don't know if it was any good, but people seem to like it.
Yeah, I've heard it's like one of the better ones of those. I've only played the 2 Iron Man ones and Incredible Hulk.
Dan Schneider put in a $5 super chat. Thanks, man. He said they were supposed to bring Red Skull back. That was the original plan. They just changed for whatever reason, but he was being teleported initially. Yeah, when I saw it in the theater, I couldn't decide if he was supposed to disintegrate or not. And then the more I saw it, the more I was like, no, that had to have been intentional. And it's so easy to say it's whatever you want to say it is.
Mm-hmm.
Even later. But I also think part of the reason they didn't bring him back was just because they couldn't get Hugo Weaving and they didn't want to recast it.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably what it is, which is a little funny because Red Skull is like a pretty easy character to recast.
I think so too. They were probably just really happy with his performance and bummed out that he wouldn't come back.
Yeah, I mean, I really like him in this movie, but like...
Or they, for whatever reason, didn't think of the obvious but brilliant notion that you had, Austin, of just make Redford Red Skull.
Yeah.
I mean, Red is in the actor's name, okay?
Exactly.
Redford Red
and
Skull.
he's a secret Nazi. Like, it's right there.
Redford Skull.
Ridiculous. It's way better than him being like a ring wraith on some planet.
And then we could easily headcanon a connection between that and Watchmen.
Oh yeah, that universe got really messed up when President Red Skullford becomes president.
That's right.
Now we're just straight up in a G.I. Joe movie, to the point where we have like toy guns and toy vehicles.
Oh, Robert, did I actually say 2010 again? I don't know why I keep saying this movie is 2010. It's 2011. Robert, I think the movie was just called The First Avenger in other countries. It was.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
That is what they did. And then there's Dum Dum Damien Dark.
Yeah, the only character in Marvel that ever punched out Godzilla.
No, he is really good casting in those.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, character actor thing where, like, this character is nothing, but, like, I like him because he's charismatic.
Well, he looks like the guy from the comics. Like, he got cast because he can do that giant smile.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why he's here.
And I think it is a cool idea to mix the Howling Commandos into this.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I like that it doesn't turn into, like, they could get more screen time, and that would be great, but it's also nice that this is early enough in MCU stable that they don't feel the need to turn it into a team movie.
Yeah.
Because if you did this now, it would just be Captain America and the Howling Commandos, and every one of them would have their own character arc.
Yeah, but also, like, it just plays more into the Captain America movies where, like, he just is a leader of a team.
Yeah.
That's what he's always doing.
Oh, that's a really good point, too. Where, like, that actually makes this title work a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
That he's basically been the leader of the Avengers before there were the Avengers. And so Nick Fury's old-fashioned notion isn't just about, the quaint idea of superheroes and costumes, but it's uh, the way Captain America looks uh, at teamwork and fighting in war is.
Hmm. No, for sure. And now we're gonna get Bucky back for like two more scenes.
So in his commentary, Johnston kind of jokingly uh, wonders what I or is it one of the other guys in that commentary? I think there's a writer there. There's a couple different people there, but one of those guys is kind of laughing at how Bucky strapped down, and we have no idea what they were doing to him.
Well, with that machine and how green it is, it looks like he was in the box. Now, who else would have robot arms on the brain?
And so it's funny because obviously that's before they know what they're going to do with Winter Soldier, and so Johnson's talking about how well we know, like in the comics, Bucky gets brought back, so they're probably going to do something with him later. But he sort of alludes to the idea that they might have been trying to make him a super soldier there.
That's always the sense that I got, that this is maybe like the start of it, and that's part of why he can survive falling off the train.
That's what Johnson said, yeah. And I also like the idea that that might be the reason that they picked him up there too and didn't just leave him there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because like if he is, I always wondered about that. Where I was like, well, it seems a little bit easy that Hydra grabs him out of the snow, and they kind of choose him arbitrarily, and he just happens to be Captain America's best friend. Like, what if they were already doing experiments on him and they were looking for him because they'd gotten it started?
Mm-hmm.
We have no confirmation about that, but I'd like to think maybe that's possible.
I mean, that's always how I've read it, like even before we had Winter Soldier. And it's definitely the type of setup film where they don't actually know where they're going, but they're setting up little breadcrumbs that they can pull, or little strings that they can pull on if they want to.
So, do you think this moment is worth the build-up?
Yeah, I think this is pretty good.
It's great. I mean, we're almost at the halfway point.
They
We
shouldn't
finally
have put
see
the shot in the trailer, but it is pretty great.
Oh, I forgot about that, which is funny because one of the things that I always find distracting going back to this movie is that for whatever reason, more than a lot of other movies, the big trailer moments always jump out at me where I'm like, yep, I remember that from the trailer. Like I always have that. Like Peggy shooting at Captain America with a shield, and the bit where she like touches his bare chest, like that's in the trailer. Like those things always jump out at me where I'm like, I must have seen that trailer in front of a lot of movies that year. I don't know.
Also, oddly, I find he looks way more like comic book Red Skull when he's from a distance. Once we get like close on him, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like Hugo Weaving. But like when he's walking into the elevator there, I'm like, oh, he looks so much more comic booky, and I think some of the lighting makes his brow look a little bit bigger from the fire.
Yeah, good call. I'm with you. Part of that might be
Looks really cool.
Part of that might be because of the CG enhancements they had to do on his face when it's close
true.
up, because they had to remove his nose in shots.
Yeah. Well, I assume that's in every shot. Is that only
yes.
for some?
No, it's. I just said that weird. They always remove his nose. Yeah. So
yeah, because that's like obviously the big thing that you would have to do with that.
Something else that came up in that commentary that I didn't know is this flying vehicle they used to escape is actually a Nazi-designed vehicle that was never built.
Oh, okay.
Like it's a real life thing that there are like blueprints for that was never put into production.
The Nazis were making just straight up G.I. Joe vehicles by the end of the war. They shouldn't have time to build them.
That's what's so weird about this movie is there's this really weird mix of like you don't know where fantasy and reality begin and end.
Mm-hmm. That's really funny.
Isn't that great? I started to say this earlier. We haven't talked really. Oh, hold on. I just had a thought.
Uh-oh.
Well, I just think it's interesting that Steve is on a bridge there that's busted like that, and he's running to try to save Bucky. And I think that's maybe supposed to be a fake out for the audience that's familiar with those characters, that like that's the place where we lose Bucky.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be surprised when he shows back up. Like that didn't happen to me in the theater, but I wonder if that was intentional. But anyway, I also think that when you get to the end of Winter Soldier and you've got Steve and Bucky on the helicarrier, it's an intentional callback to that moment.
Maybe.
I never thought of that before, but just the way it's shot and the distance between them, it's like really similar.
Yeah, it's possible. Sorry, he's back at the door. I won't make everyone sick this time.
Austin's very professional. In the words of the doctor that did the Joker's plastic surgery in '89, you see what I have to work with here.
Sorry, I'm back.
I had just enough time to massively insult you.
Oh, that sounds about right.
You didn't even hear it. I'm so happy about that.
I returned triumphantly, though, like Cap and his boys here.
You came back just so that you could have this fanfare, like dun dun dun.
Yeah, exactly, with my G.I. Joe Hydra vehicle.
I really like the exchange with him and Tommy Lee Jones here in a minute when he says, because I mean, Steve always doing the right thing. He broke orders, and so he did the right thing, but he's not entitled. He says, I'm going to submit myself for disciplinary action, and Tommy Lee Jones says that won't be necessary. And I really like the beat there. I like the way those guys take their time in that moment.
Yeah, I also like the shot of him and the Howling Commandos behind him walking in is like the exact shot he was filming during the montage.
Yes, I had that thought too. I like how Tommy Lee Jones is doing. He's almost typecast here. I mean, he's just doing his standard dry wit,
tough guy voice.
Seems like he doesn't have a pulse, but you can always see the undercurrent of it, and it's just right for this character.
Yeah. No, there's like a couple moments where he gets to have really good comedic bits that kind of, I don't know if he would do in other roles with this performance. I think he only showed up for this movie though because he got to eat a steak on camera. He was like, "You throw a steak in there, and I'm gonna be there."
Yeah, I really wonder why he picked this project. Because it feels like it's kind of written with him in mind, but I also think that he elevates his material. Like I think there's a lot less on the page for him than what he's bringing to it.
They probably just wrote generic like General Man. And
yeah,
you can like easily slide him into that. Like he's one of a couple actors that could do that really well.
Well,
look at how many blimps there are in there.
So many blimps.
It's like the Rise of Skywalker. All the ships flying in.
Well, and like I said, there's so much Batman animated series in this. All these blimps and.
But like times 8,000. There's so many blimps.
They just copied and pasted all the blimps.
They're all gonna crash into each other. There's no room to fly.
I was also gonna say Tommy Lee Jones is bringing. Maybe this is obvious, but some of what he did in the Men in Black movies to this, and then when he's driving the car at the end in the tunnel, I'm getting massive flashbacks to Men in Black.
No, very true. I mean, he probably, after they lost Rip Torn, he probably could have just been upgraded to like this kind of a role in those movies if they wanted to continue with him, in a smaller role like they do in 3.
I wish they'd done that, but I also wish they'd had the guts to leave him alone and not bring him back at all.
Yeah. But by this point, it's too late. He's already I think the same year as Men in Black 3.
So you mentioned 2011. I thought Men in Black 3 was 12.
It might be. I don't remember.
but it's real close to
I've
there.
only seen it
So
once.
you mentioned setup and payoff earlier, and some really smart, subtle ones too. Like
Mm.
we get very little character bits for the Howling Commandos, and like you blink and you miss them. This was one that I didn't pick up on until this last viewing. But you've got, and I don't remember these guys besides Dum Dum Dugan's names, but you got the black guy who says in an earlier scene that he was learning German and then he switched to French, and then in that last scene he starts speaking French.
Yeah, yeah, that is a thing. Yeah.
It's really nice how all that stuff tracks.
No, the Howling Commandos work on that logic of you don't really remember who they are, but they all have a distinct look. So you're like, oh, it's that guy.
Yes.
So that helps them feel less generic.
Yeah, and part of the reason uh, that they're multi-ethnic.
Yeah, and you have like the guy with the red beret and stuff like that.
But I think also to make the point of the clear-cut good guys versus bad guys, and also to make it not just about American patriotism.
When I also think, it's like because they're going up against, the Aryan race, the like type ideology, and they're a group of, different people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that
Yeah.
it illustrates the difference in those ideologies.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're setting up the dance thing because it's not just set up and payoff in this movie.
It goes all the way to Endgame.
Well, when we do like 18, oh my God, what is the line now? I can do this all day.
Yes.
Like that set up and payoff in this movie.
And that's one of the first things he says.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and we pay it off like 30 times across the MCU.
Yeah, there are iconic things that start in this movie that I think a lot of people. I think this movie gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, and I think a lot of people forget where some of those things come from, and that you have to give this movie credit for some of that stuff.
But I feel like with that specifically, I don't know if it's iconic as much as they like bashed it into our brains until it became
Sure,
iconic.
yeah, however you want to look at it. But the reason I say iconic is because some of those things are good ideas that should be brought back, just not the sheer obnoxious number of times they do it. And what I was going to say is the fact that we can't get away from those things actually makes this movie hold up for me, where I go back and I look at this and I'm like, the MCU is feeling more and more played out every time we do that stuff. But you go back to the first time it shows up and it feels kind of fresh again.
Yeah, because I mean that's just set up and payoff in this movie. Not that it's like bad every time it comes up, but like they do go back to it a little too many times.
So this is kind of the clunkiest and maybe bit, and maybe besides some stuff with the ending, the biggest misstep in this movie for me. This moment is really TV, and I don't like it. And
well, even his reaction when she sees him is he like just became the Human Torch again. Like he like went back to like that style of like comedic, just like in the face he makes.
Yeah, that's a good point. We could handle this idea in a more mature way, and it would be worth doing. Where you have a Steve Rogers who never thought he had a chance with women at all, and now he looks like Captain America, and he is in over his head, and he still doesn't know how to act with women, how to deal with women, and so when an attractive woman jumps on him like that, like what do? It's difficult to say no, and that's not fair to the girl that he's beginning to kind of have a potential relationship with. Not that they've solidified anything, but when he acts like that, he's making her think that maybe he's not the guy that she thought he was. That could work. That could be explored, but it feels like it's there more because it's there less to explore the new identity he's building and how difficult it is to come out of a shell, and more just, well, it's a romantic relationship and it needs some kind of a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most superficial feeling thing in the movie, where it's like it feels thrown in there for the women in the audience to me, where it's like all the women will be applauding when the guy that's acting like a pig, because all men are pigs, right, gets shot at with a gun. Like, it feels really superficial to me.
Well, the best thing that comes out of it is just Howard Stark walking around going, "Hey, you never know what those women think. That's why I just do science."
Yeah, and that's hilarious. And I'm fine with them having a little misunderstanding for a minute in all of that. But it is weird that we get this whole montage before they. I never thought about this. How much time has passed? We get this whole montage before the those two characters kind of make up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty funny. Is it like months before they're finally kind of friends again? Like, that's really funny.
Yeah, it's, women scorned or whatever, as
I
I'm
mean,
sure Howard Stark probably said.
that's not fair. It's kind of more just like this subtle friction that they have in the background, I guess. But it is funny to me that all of this stuff happens before he finally understands what the word fondue means.
Sorry, I'll be right back.
Okay, this is the last time I do a commentary with Austin when he's dog sitting. Chewbacca's lover, how is he acting like a pig? They're not a couple. She came off as entitled. Yeah, and again, I think there's a difference between what it's trying to communicate and what it's actually communicating. Chewbacca's lover. So, some of it is probably just we're rushing past it because for the sake of time, and I bet that was more maturely and subtly handled in the original script. I would be surprised if it wasn't. But she comes off entitled, as you say, and what it clearly is supposed to be is she thought he was better than that, than to just start making out with the first girl that shows interest in him. So yes, there's the technicality of they're not a couple yet, so she is entitled if she thinks that he should be exclusive with her or whatever. That's not what it is, but it feels that way because we rush past it so hard, and because it does feel like an
emotional reaction,
and because it feels like an overreaction to start firing a gun at him just for a cute moment. That's what I don't like about it.
Very much like a movie moment. Like, that's what it's there for.
But that's all I want to say about that. Austin, talk about the suit.
Okay. The suit.
Well, because we just introduced it, and I know you have feelings about the suit.
Yeah, I don't know. It's okay. I feel like they kind of always struggled getting a good Captain America suit for a while. This one's fine. I think it looks a little stiff. Part of it is, I don't know, the shoulders are weird. But I don't know. It's not their worst Captain America suit. I think part of it is like it looks like he can't like put his arms up.
Oh yeah, that's a good call. No, the reason I set you up like that is because the other day you sent me a text when you were watching this, and you were like, they already had an okay suit. Why'd they have to screw it up in Avengers?
Oh, and the Avengers suit is the worst suit.
It is. I'm with you. The colors are too bright as part of it.
Which, yeah, it looks like plastic. I don't know. The helmet's rough on it. I'm fine with the colors being bright. It's just the suit just looks bad.
Yeah, I really like the material with this, and this is one of those few places where it's intentionally trying to be more realistic and super functional, and I think it manages to do both things simultaneously. It looks enough like a superhero suit to me, but it's believable as a thing that your like token symbol that is now allowed to lead troops in war would actually wear as a soldier. Yeah,
I think especially, as we move forward, I think they do better at the function and just comic bookiness to his suit.
Well, Chewbacca's lever reminds us that this is based on Ultimate. That's true.
Like, kind of.
I mean, to some degree. I'm just saying they were probably looking at that.
They definitely were. It also doesn't really look like that suit.
That's why it's based on Austin. It's based on.
That's why I said kind of. No, I mean, they're looking at Ultimate pretty hard early on, and I mean, I'm sure it probably helps that they had Millar as one of the people on the creative committee.
This is going to be an odd point, but I was indifferent to this suit until I bought an action figure of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks really good in action figure form, and that made me appreciate it more. I got the Marvel Legends for it.
Interesting. I would have thought this wouldn't have looked great in action
I know.
figure
That's
form.
why I like it. Because it's shocking how toyetic it turned out to be.
I also wish the Hydra agents were green. I don't really like that we made them black.
Okay, that's fair. I always forget that when I'm watching this that they're green, and then I look at Hydra the comics. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They always had those
a lot
goofy
of it
green
is some
suits.
of them look like toys, so it's like just make them green.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not gonna disagree with that. And then this looks like Harry Potter to me.
It does a little bit. I think, looking at the suit, the colors are maybe a little too muted. Where like the red on it looks a little bit more like brown.
Yeah, you're right. There's a middle place we could get between this and the Avenger suit, because I just think
and I think we do hit that eventually.
It's weird for me to complain about colors being too bright with a superhero costume, but I just mean in comparison to everything else in that movie.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel like it fits in that movie. I don't know.
The main thing on the Avengers suit that doesn't work is just the helmet.
Sure. This is one of the best scenes in the movie.
Oh, this is why Tommy Lee Jones agreed to be in it.
Well, and this may be the scene that made them, want Tommy Lee Jones for this role.
Yeah, this is where he gets to really live it up.
Just watching these two actors tear it up together is wonderful.
Eats a steak with a glass of milk. I hadn't even really thought about that until just the second. What? That's an odd matching of flavor.
Well, and when you overthink it, it'll make you never want to do that again, because it's like you're eating...
Do you think it's the same cow?
You're eating the meat of the animal that could produce the milk. It's weird.
Maybe that's why they go together.
Tonight on the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project, we analyze the weirdness of eating the meat of an animal that can produce the drink that you're drinking with it. But yeah, the verbal tete-a-tete here is so good.
Mm-hmm.
And Zola's best line reading for me is in this scene, and another one of the bits that sticks with me the most, because he can do it! But yeah, what you got to ask yourself is, did Tommy Lee Jones' character intend to ever let Zola have the steak? Or did he know he was vegetarian and that's why he brought a steak? Or even if he didn't know he was vegetarian, he was going to make Zola think he was going to give him the steak and then eat it anyway? Like, I have so many questions.
Yeah, I think it was probably exactly that. He was like, haha, I'm going to bring the steak in for him, and then I'm going to eat it in front of him. Oh, you're vegetarian? Well, guess what? I'm going to eat it in front of you.
Plushy DX says, like chicken and eggs. Nah, the cow and milk thing is weirder than that.
I agree with John Kelling. If he's eating veal and drinking milk, that's pure diabolical.
Sparkus lover Tommy Lee Jones is obviously not Jewish.
Yeah, like very obviously so. Oh, look here, it's the horrible CGI hanger.
Yeah, this is the first place where the CG most jumps out at me is looking unfortunately fake. So there are shots earlier in the movie where, like I said, it feels more like old Hollywood matte paintings, and I'm really into it actually.
Hmm.
Like the Shark Expo, I like the fakeness of that.
Yeah,
This
that's
not
fair.
this not so much. This feels like the laziness on the level of, I just mean of what it looks like. People hate it when I say that. Where it's like people worked really hard on this. I get it. I'm just saying it looks lazy, to the same degree as like some of the green screen shots in Attack of the Clones.
But I mean, when you say it's lazy, you're not saying that against the animators. You're saying that to the filmmakers, where they just throw it off to underworked animators or underpaid, overworked.
Yeah, the way it's conceived looks lazy to me.
My big
If you
thing,
put
and
it,
we see this a lot in movies now with green screen like this, is we want to make it look really big, and we don't fill it out at all. Like there's no
yeah,
depth to it.
and one of the reasons I was going to say this, one of the reasons there's not enough depth to it is because we didn't put anything in the foreground. There are the reason that the shot, and we talked right over it, and it is a green screen special effects shot, and we didn't comment on it because it looks good. When they're up in the snow, or have we gotten to it yet? With the snow and when we lose Bucky, have we gotten there yet?
Well, yeah, we just passed that.
Okay, when you have that shot, there's snow in the foreground,
Hmm.
and it looks like you're really there. That is another green screen shot like that, but it's conceived in such a way where it actually tricks your eyes, and then also there's just not a big plane in the background that looks partly rendered. Like that plane just doesn't look like it's there.
Hmm. No, exactly. And there's
RJ
just no
Godzilla
depth
says
to.
they were
Sorry, go
running out. He says they were running out of money at this point, though, which is fair.
ahead. Yeah, exactly.
That's why you don't want to shoot too much in sequence with a big special effects movie. You
Hmm.
want to get some of your, you know, crazier high production stuff up front, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, we're still doing stuff like this. Like there's movies that are only a couple years old that I think do this kind of hanger thing where we make something look really big and we don't fill it out.
I I keep saying simplicity. That really quick moment there with Steve and Peggy is really kind of heartfelt,
Mhm.
and I've always appreciated the tragedy of alcohol doesn't affect him.
Yeah, well, and it's a nice little kind of payoff moment to that the drinks with was it
With
Erkstein's?
Erskine, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't get to have the drink there, and now he literally can't drink.
And after he's lost another person that mattered to him.
Hmm.
But
And
yeah,
now
we
for the
we
third
could
act.
have, and now we're in Return of the Jedi.
Well, now we're just in every 2000s Marvel film, or like mid to late 2000s Marvel film. We're in the woods.
Well, yes, that too. But this always reminded me of Return of the Jedi because we do some of the same gags.
Oh, true.
Like that's Return of the Jedi.
Although the green screen here looks better than it does in Return of the Jedi.
That's true. That's true. But that's and also there's
There's the
A
Wilhelm.
Wilhelm, and I think there might be one in that very scene in Return of the Jedi. But I
Uh, Probably. There's
can't
also a
remember.
moment I almost brought it up too when he throws the guy out of the giant tank in the montage where it's like, oh, that is not a Wilhelm. Like it's like a similar kind of scream, but it's not that. They were saving it for this moment.
And then the outside of this base here looks a little bit like the one in Return of the Jedi. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of Star Wars right here.
I mean, Joe Johnston is probably a director that was asked to work on Star Wars at some point. He's just, one of those working class directors that can kind of step in and do whatever.
Well, and it's just natural to be influenced by uh all of that kind of serial throwback stuff.
Hmm. When he got to do Jurassic Park 3,
Like
and
there's
of course we haven't brought it up, but
that's true too. Yeah,
here.
naturally there's going to be Spielbergian stuff here. This was also in the trailer.
Yes, I remember that.
Robert, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was something I thought of when I was watching this last week that I did not bring up. He said it's a nice contrast with Tony too. Tony's an alcoholic and Cap literally can't get drunk.
Well, it could have been.
Yeah, we don't do anything with it, but and I know that's like you've always complained about that being an Iron Man fan, but
Hmm.
to be fair to Robert's point, you the first shot you get of him in his movie is with a drink in his hand. So
Hmm.
if you'll forget the rest of the MCU and just look at these two movies, that looks intentional.
No, that is very true. I mean, we're not at a point yet where we're going to completely throw that away yet.
Like I'm just saying, these are really great companion pieces.
Hmm. No, for sure.
Oh, and it's also cool that you've got a kind of contrast between their villains, where you've with this movie, it's straight up black and white. You know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, and with Iron Man, obviously you have a hero who is not acting very heroically initially, uh, and has to learn to be less narcissistic, and then his villain he thinks is one of his best friends.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean they're perfect companion pieces.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder how much of that is unintentional and how much of it is like designed to be that way.
I wonder that too because in the theater it looked 1-to-1 to me. Like
Hmm.
it looked like they put Iron Man right next to them as they were making this and said, "How do we intelligently make it its opposite?"
When is that? Yeah, maybe a way that Marvel is kind of like hand holding a little bit.
Sure.
You know, where they're saying like this is how we want to portray these two characters in relation to each other.
Well, and if so, it's the right sort of micromanaging, I guess, because it doesn't feel restrictive.
Hmm.
Like I feel
No,
like they
because it
get,
still works on its own.
I feel like they, yes, and I feel like they get really creative with it.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Like I think they're well because I said earlier, what would it be like for the audience if these had been put out in the opposite order? I think we get a more likable and altruistic Captain America maybe because you get their Iron Man first. Whereas then we
Hmm.
have this such a deeply flawed hero that we want his opposite. We want a full on contrast. And
Yeah,
they've
for
been
sure.
played like that to some degree in comics before, of
Hmm.
course, but they really take it to the nines in the movies.
Yeah, it is. Like there is obviously like a comic component to these two, but you can really build it out more when they're like the two pillars of your world.
Yeah, because they play it like Batman and Superman.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of overall MCU things, because we don't know this yet, uh, how
Talk about a
do
thing we don't know, Austin.
how do these weapons work when the power source is like a space teleporting Infinity Stone?
Oh, you mean when we get rid of it, the weapon shouldn't work anymore?
No, no, I just mean like what is that? Like is it like because it's not like a space thing. Like how is that using its power? Are
Yeah.
these people getting teleported into space? Are they all ring wraiths?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because it looks like they're getting disintegrated.
Yeah, because obviously here like it's just the cosmic cube. Like I'm not complaining about it. It's
Wouldn't
just
it have been funny if we
it's a
get?
weird retroactive thing.
It is. You're right. I never thought of that. What if we get to that planet that Red Skull's on in Infinity War and they're just all there?
What if we get to Battle World and there's just everyone from World War II that was shot by one of these?
And and this is all painful.
Oh yeah, it looks rough.
This is hard to look at. Like I would rather watch skinny Steve Rogers all day long than look at the green screen of these scenes. It's tough to look at. Now some of this street stuff when they're driving, I'm more okay with. because again, it just looks kind of old Hollywood. It looks more like matte paintings. Like I would almost have to go case by case and just look at each individual shot and say that one looks like a stylistic choice. That one looks like they didn't spend enough time on it.
No, even the car looks rough.
When it looks like the Rocketeer, it's working to me. That's the thing, because the Rocketeer has a lot of those matte painting type shots where it feels like an intentionally stylized, almost drawn comic book world.
Come on, Tommy Lee Jones. Just one to say goodbye.
Just kiss him.
Just kiss him, god damn it. You know you want to.
I know we talk about this all the time, but that feels like, again, I miss these quaint early days of the MCU. That feels like one of those jokes that they would probably hang on too long in a later movie.
Oh, I thought you were going to say maybe a joke they wouldn't make now.
Oh, well, I mean...
You're probably more right, though. That is probably a joke where we would have had some sort of comeback.
Yeah. We linger on that stuff too much.
Steve would have had like a comeback, and then Peggy would have said something, and then they all would have looked around. And then Peggy would yell, "What are you doing? Just jump on the damn plane."
John Kelly kind of wish we could have kept Bridges as Obadiah Stane for a bit longer, which comic movies would stop killing more major seeming antagonists. Well, it also feels like we got to get rid of Red Skull because we got rid of Obadiah Stane, and we're paralleling these movies, you see. So,
well, I mean, that's what was supposed to happen. He wasn't supposed to be the villain of that. I'm also
right.
more fine with it because he's not like a giant Iron Man villain. Like, he is through the Denny O'Neil run, but like, he's only in that suit in one issue and then he dies. Like, I'm fine with him not being built up more.
You know what? Now that you said that about the Hydra agents and how they should be green, I'm more disappointed looking at them. You're really right about it. Like it's kind of distracting now. It's like, why don't they have some kind of color?
It is one of those places where it feels like we're still not exactly in a place where we can add more color to the stuff. It's black leather. It's not leather, thankfully. But...
RJ Godzilla, I like this question. Would it have been better to release First Avenger right after Iron Man instead of Incredible Hulk, then release Hulk, and then simultaneously Iron Man 2 and Thor before we get Avengers? No, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. Because first of all, it might have felt a little cuter in having the yin-yang of these two companion pieces right next to each other.
Do you also think it maybe would have been like too much of that Iron Man 2 thing where it's like they're companion pieces in that way? Like you have to watch both of them to get exactly what we're going for?
Yeah, because you want these to be able to stand alone, and they both do. But the other thing I was going to say is I appreciate all the world building in this a lot more than I would have probably because and notice a lot more of it because it's building on all the things we've had already. Like we didn't talk about this, but you brought up Thor because you got the Odin's treasure room, and we know the Tesseract was there, and obviously you've got Howard Stark here, and we've got the callback to the Stark Expo, and so stuff from both Iron Man 1 and 2, but also the super soldier idea is established in Incredible Hulk. It's using all of them.
You could easily flip that with Thor and Hulk with this, though, where...
Yes, you can, but I wouldn't want this movie before I've had all of those.
Yeah, for sure. How does Captain America fly the kamikaze bomb plane into this plane and it doesn't blow up?
Oh, that's a really good question.
That's something I've just always wondered. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like he deactivated the bomb somehow.
Unless it's like you got to pull something to arm it. It could be that.
So I didn't get a chance to bring this up earlier, so I'm going to mention it now that we're back in the set. And this set is super cool.
Yeah, this stuff looks good.
Well, they're actually here. I mean, they built this set.
That's what I mean. Like, it looks good. We're actually here.
Good. We're there. But I love the big open window. I think that's a really neat set. So you were complaining about that opening scene and how you want it completely axed. And I think that's when we're in present day, and we find Steve in the ice. And Austin, I think that's so funny because they went through a ridiculous ordeal to do these two scenes
Mm-hmm.
because they had to shoot that. I kid you not, this is what they did because they did this in order. They that is in the set, like that is physically in the set.
Yeah.
When we get Captain America, and they frozen it. They had to freeze it and then thaw it to shoot this scene.
Oh, it's like the Halloween thing, where in Halloween, the Michael Myers house is like run down and destroyed, like it is in the present.
Oh,
And then
really?
in order to film the opening scene where it's a regular house, like everyone, including like all the actors, had to get together and like repair the house for that.
That's amazing.
Those shots, it's like that.
But I
That's
just
really
think that's so funny because you're like, this scene shouldn't even be here, and I'm like, they killed themselves to make it.
You didn't have to go that hard, Joe Johnson. You didn't need it. Also, while we were watching this, I feel like there's an out for how you could have made the ice thing work a little bit better, where Cap kicks Red Skull into the controls, and you see them spark a bit, and then they keep fighting.
Yes, that's all you had to do, and then
That's
you're
all you have
right.
to do.
And then the stick is stuck. There's nothing you can do about it. He's going down.
Are they maybe thinking that it sparking is enough to make us know he can't land it now?
I don't know. I mean, to be fair, the idea is supposed to be that he's making the self-sacrifice play, and because he did the right thing, he gets lucky that he gets to live later. But the problem is this whole thing is so contrived, and I am convinced that it makes sense to the people that wrote it, but that they cannot communicate it to me. The more I'm looking at this, it feels like another one of those moments that's where the exposition is rushed through, and there's like maybe a couple of lines that could be added that would make this somehow make sense, where he's gonna force the like he can't force the plane down, and it's on a trajectory to New York or wherever it's going. So he says, I've got to put it in the water. And I'm like, if you can take the stick and make it go in the water, why can't you turn it and go anywhere you want to go with it? And he says, I can't, there's not going to be a safe landing. And I'm like, is it just because you don't know how to land it? Like,
Well, it's because he's looking at the computer, and like the engines are like down and things like that.
okay.
Like I don't think he could fly back, but like I don't know.
So like he doesn't have enough fuel, or the engines are just about to give out, or
Yeah, it might be that. Like
is that all it is?
because they're like red. Like maybe he took out some of that. I don't know. I feel like there's probably a good explanation here. It's just badly communicated.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't exactly understand what's happening
When
here.
she says, "How's the plane?" and he says, "Hard to explain." He needs to say, "No, look, this is the issue."
That's so good. That is them throwing the hands in the air going, there's no chance we're going to explain this to the audience. Hard to explain.
You have like 20 minutes to explain it, god damn it.
And plus DX says there are other planes on the ship.
Well, they might have already flown off by now, but at the same time, actually, no.
No, they're still there.
No, they are still there because he took out the only ones that left. You're right. No,
Well,
never
well,
mind.
all you have to do is say he's not a pilot. Like, he's not a pilot.
He couldn't have just crashed into a cornfield.
Yeah. No, that was the thing that I never understood all the way from the theater is I don't know why it has to go in the water. Because there's land all around them.
Mm-hmm. What's part of the issue of just we moved it to a plane, I guess, and then had to.
I mean, I guess it doesn't
Justify
go in.
it.
I guess it goes in the ice, but
Also, would he wouldn't freeze right away? Like, is he just sitting in this plane until he
Yeah, I always
freezes?
remember this as he just goes right into the water because didn't he kind of talk about it that way? But then it goes into the ice and it just sinks down. He's Captain America, and they know where he is. Why can't he just get out of it and run in a direction and have someone meet him?
Hmm.
Am I right? Just like, what am I missing here?
No, it's not especially well thought out. It's that thing of we know where we have to end, but we don't know how to get there. And now we're back in the future.
It's got to be easier to contrive
Oh
that.
no, this is still with Howard.
Yeah, this is still with Howard. I remember.
And also, how far away did he fly from where he dropped this? Like, I feel like he's like 20 feet down the road.
Yeah, exactly. I remember having confusion between this and Avengers as to how exactly the Tesseract winds up with Nick Fury, but I don't remember why I was confused about that.
Yeah, I guess it's stuck in Shield for forever. Well, it got eaten by a cat at one point.
Oh yeah, now it's super complicated. Robert or somebody earlier, sorry if I'm not quoting the right person because I'm not going to take the time to scroll up and find it, but somebody was asking how we feel about the retroactive choice of the Avengers name being because of Captain Marvel, and naturally,
It's
of course,
awful.
I hate that.
Yeah, no one likes that.
But I hate all
Not
the
even
prequel.
that little kid with his Captain America trash can. Even he hates it.
I hate all the prequel crap in that.
And that
So,
kid's
yeah.
probably not even alive in modern day MCU, and even he hates it.
Well, and it just it makes this title kind of pointless.
Hmm. Yeah, it is weird. There's so many just like bad prequel-y choices in that movie.
I guess he's still the first Avenger because he was Captain America in the 40s, but like the name doesn't even come from him at
Mhm.
all. And like that's okay if it's just an arbitrary name chosen later and retroactively he's the first Avenger, but once there's an origin for it that post dates him, it's weird. Robert, what's worse, the Avenger name origin or how Fury lost his eye? Well, definitely that second thing.
Definitely
For-
the Avenger thing. The Fury
for
thing
me.
makes sense.
Stop it. That just pisses me off on a personal level because I love I love how ambiguous or I can't talk right now, ambiguous that is in Winter Soldier, and how much motivation and drama there is behind it for Nick Fury, and then we make a joke out of it, and I can't even deal with it.
I hate that his response is Mother Flurkin. That response makes it so much worse. I don't even think about the cat scratching his eye. I'm always just like, oh my god, the stupid Mother Flurkin line. Ugh.
So Shield has such incredible resources, Austin.
Yeah, how could they not have figured out, this is where he crashed, like let's get a game from after that.
Oh no, that's not what I was gonna say.
Oh, okay.
You stepped on my joke.
I'm sorry.
What I was gonna say is Shield has such incredible resources that they're able to make a singular room in sepia tone. It's amazing.
Oh my god, what if the entire movie was in sepia tone and this was like the Wizard of Oz? Like the colors come out?
You know, I don't know how you feel about that. I would have been all for it.
Genuinely, like I'm joking, but that could have been great.
It could have worked.
That would have been like a good way of like really getting into his head for an audience. I don't know
Yeah.
if an audience would have been excited to see a black and white Captain America movie, but so I know why they didn't do
Well, see,
that.
I think you just make it, sort of sepia tone and muted colors. You maybe do the Sin City thing where there's certain colors that pop in places.
Sure.
Where you just go really stylized with it, because I think a lot of audiences would be down for kind of an odd color palette choice as opposed to just straight up black and white. And then when you get here, it just looks like the MCU again.
Yeah.
Then you're sort of also stuck with that. You're setting a precedent where period pieces have to be done like that.
No, that would be cool.
Originally, there was apparently like pages of dialogue there.
Oh, interesting.
Where Nick Fury just starts explaining everything about modern day to Captain America.
You think you're the only man frozen in time? Well, let me tell you.
I really love the way that's handled and how short it is, and that he's just man at a time taking it all in, and he doesn't even have time to be overwhelmed because he's so disappointed that he's never going to see Peggy again, ostensibly.
Yeah, like I said,
I wish for the sake of this movie I liked that relationship better so that I cared about that more. But again, retroactively it watches better. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, it's good. I mean, it's something I said at the beginning. I'm like just kind of two minds where I'm like, I do like this ending, but part of me does wonder if we maybe should have saved this for Avengers. And I don't really know. Like, I don't really know where I line on that.
Yeah, I mean, the prevailing wisdom when you're MCU is you're building to Avengers, and people have very much gotten the memo now that these are all interconnected.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be... And I'm with you, like, the singular story should matter more. On the other hand, people that are coming to see this purely because... And there definitely were a lot of people at this point that are seeing the Captain America movie more because we're building these Marvel movies than because they care about Captain America. You do need some kind of in-continuity reason for why now. Like why are we telling this story now? So I may be with you on the bookend where you didn't have to open with it. I do kind of think you have to close with it.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. At the same time, like, we're so early in the MCU, I don't really have like a why now thing because it's like we just started. Like, it's not like it's I don't know.
Well, yeah, but you've had 4 movies already, and they've all been going linearly, and you haven't had a flashback movie yet.
That's what I mean. Like, you're so early that like it would just be setting up the standard that you can go back. You don't necessarily always have to be moving forward.
Yeah.
Like, we're early enough that it's setting precedent before it's going against anything.
Well, we can agree
I just
to disagree.
wonder, like,
I honestly really liked that they were always moving forward, and that if you were going to do a thing like this, it was going to be connected to something happening now. Personally, I just always liked that.
No, like I said, I like the scene in the movie. I've always wondered that.
But, like, it really irks me that we do... that we break that later when we get to Captain Marvel, and we do that just because she's going to feature in the next thing we're doing, and the whole thing is a flashback movie, and it's also retconning things I care about. And then Black Widow just, like, no good reason whatsoever for that movie to exist, really, but also for that to be set, like, around Civil War, but come out way later when it did. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there shouldn't have been a Black Widow movie. I'm saying it shouldn't have been like that. And I still think it's stupid that Marvel couldn't get ahead of DC on a solo female-led superhero movie. It's so stupid. Come on, you guys.
Yeah, even new DC it's going to be their second film.
Oh, yeah. Is Supergirl their second film?
It
is kind of weird that they're doing... We're dating this again. That they're doing a whole full-blown reimagined DC universe again, and their first 2 movies are Superman-related.
No, that is really funny.
It's kind of odd.
I guess it's easy to carry over.
Really cool choice to give us this entire song.
Oh, I agree. And this song's so wonderful. I'm glad that we get to hear it again. How do you like the score of this film?
I think it's I think a lot of it is kind of slight and unmemorable, but the main theme is good.
Yeah, like I feel like it works in moments, but like I'll never think about it again when I'm not watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not Silvestri's best work or anything.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And
I
then he'll
do
get to
like
do
that.
Avengers.
I do like that that theme sticks around, like really subtly. We never do a ton with it again, but when you get to Winter Soldier, that's in a completely different genre, and so the tone of it's different, and it's not gonna keep running with that. But it's not like X-Men X2 where we just completely abandon what we had before. And so
Oh, okay.
when we introduce Captain America in that movie, very subtly that theme comes back in the score. It's really great.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I don't remember the score to that either. So I couldn't remember if they just replaced it entirely.
That score does stick with me more.
Hmm.
Not that it's one that I listen to on its own or anything. Like
Yeah.
it is pretty
When a lot of people complain about the MCU scores, and for me, it's more they work fine, like in the movie. I just don't tend to remember them outside of that, outside of like a handful.
they don't typically feel like a piece of art unto themselves, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they're serviceable.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
fine. And they've got a few memorable enough earwormy themes,
Hmm. No, exactly.
but I was gonna say it's more it's a lot of like tense ambiance in
Hmm.
Winter Soldier, so it's not something I would just play back. You know, it's sort of like the difference between the Begin score, the Dark Knight score,
Yeah.
where I played the Begin score on its own quite a bit. The Dark Knight score I don't because it's just got all that dissonant string work that's just and I can't just like turn that on while I'm doing the dishes. You know.
Yeah, I also feel like we maybe did a bad job of being like, this is the music of like, this character, and we can kind of weave them in and out of the MCU, or like they can come back in the team movies.
There's
Uh,
not enough of that. No, you're absolutely right.
there's a good video I watched where somebody edited the score for Endgame, like the big portal scene, where it's going like in and out of the individual characters as they're appearing,
And now that you say that,
and it
why the
sounds
hell
really
didn't they
cool.
do that?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly, and it sounds really neat.
It makes you wish that you had a music director that was like overseeing all of this, sort of like Feige just for music.
Yeah, because to a degree, it feels like they don't really care. Like it's like, well, we have music
It's
because it
like
has to be
it's
there, but
movies, so you have to have music.
mhm.
You know, you kind of wish you could have like a Shirley Walker or something, because
Yeah,
if
because
she had been doing this, you think about, you go back to Batman TAS and you think about how every villain has a theme, and every time that villain shows up, you hear that theme. Like if she was doing these,
or if you think about say if like Michael Keaton Batman and Christopher Reeve Superman, for example, if they met, you would want those themes to like interplay off of each other.
yeah, of course, they were also more iconic in the first place.
No, very true, but like we also could have done the thing that we talked about earlier with the I could do this all day, where we could have like beaten them into us as being iconic, kind of like what they do with the
The
Avengers
Avengers
theme.
theme does get beaten into us to the point
Yeah.
where Jason started rolling his eyes in the theater when it would come up and things, and he's hilarious because to this day, when it comes up in something that's not an Avengers movie, he gets really mad.
Because that was a theme I didn't think
He
of at
just
all
goes,
in that
"Stop
movie,
it!"
and now it's like burned in my brain because we kept beating it into all of us. Like you could have done that with all these characters, even if it's not as memorable.
Well, and that theme is too close to the uh, jingle for the U.S. Army.
Oh, I don't even know what that sounds like. That's funny.
It sounds really close. Every time I hear that, that gets stuck in my head.
Is it weird to end this on Captain America will return in the Avengers and then immediately cut to an Avengers trailer?
There he is. I still think it's just weird that Nick Fury walks out of the shadows. He's the last character we saw Steve interact with.
That's right, it's me. Hello, man, that I met a minute ago.
we were just we were just talking to you. This trailer is the most dated MCU thing there is. Like it looks like a mid 2000s trailer.
Oh my god, this wants
And
to
it
be
looks like a
Mission
TV
Impossible
spot.
and Dark Knight. So, or not Dark Knight specifically, but like that kind of a thing and how dark it is in places. But it wants to be like Mission Impossible-y at the same time too.
Look how young some of these actors are playing characters that aren't supposed to age
It is
or age
true.
that much.
This should have been the main Avengers theme that we beat in. Just the. Imagine if that popped up every like 3 seconds.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, we're going to go on now to tweet length reviews and find out what the audience thinks about this movie. Thanks for being here with us through the whole thing. If you're watching live and if you would like to participate in tweet length reviews, you can always go to patreon.com/geekvolution. We do this at the $5 tier and above, so the producers get to do this too, but you don't have to be at the producer tier. You can just join at the $5 tier, and you can put in your tweet length review either on Patreon or the Superhero Rewind Discord, which you do have to be a producer to be a part of. There's my Patreon spiel. Austin is going to read us the Discord ones, and then I'm going to go see.
We got two on here.
I'm going to go see if we have any on Patreon.
Yeah. So subject 879, he says. The third act isn't as good as the first two, but this might be my favorite Phase 1 MCU film. Rating hero. Apparently he just rates Phase 1 pretty low.
Yeah, it's my favorite one, middle of the road.
Middle of the road.
Well, maybe they're all heroes, but that's the one he likes the most.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just funny, like those two back to back.
No, I think that's hilarious. I'm actually very surprised to hear that.
MattBat68 says, a pulpy and sincere delight, one of the more underrated MCU films in my opinion, rating superhero.
I agree. I have that thing with this where every time I go back and watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a lot better than people tend to give it credit for. It just doesn't come up that much. But it's also not one that I think to put on.
Yeah, for sure.
I think just because Winter Soldier eclipsed it. Like, I love that movie too much.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's definitely true.
And
it's got maybe a little bit of that Rise of the Planet of the Apes thing, where I don't know that people talk about that one as much.
Yeah, that's true. It's like you've got that's a really good comparison. You've got the thing that ends up feeling like just the stepping stone to get to the next thing, except this does not have X-Men syndrome.
Mm-hmm. No, that it doesn't.
It's a setup movie only in that it is an origin movie. And and would you put this like in the upper echelon of origin movies? Like, this doesn't feel superfluous, or like, can we just move on to the meat of the thing? Why do we have to sit around and look at the origin?
Yes, I feel like it's on the lower end of the upper echelon of origin movies,
but probably in the top 10 at least, if not 5.
Yes. I'm gonna say top 10. I don't know if I'll go with top 5.
Yeah, we should make that list at some point. Well, because whenever I'm doing this, I'm always just thinking, like, well, Superman and Begins, those are the great origin movies, and nothing else is really all that great as far as origins go. And then I start thinking about it, I'm like, no, there's other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to think about it a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, of course, most MCU movies start their hero franchises with an origin, and most of their origins are decent.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because obviously Iron Man is a great origin film. Iron Man would be in the top 5.
Yeah, Iron Man's a really good one. I like the Doctor Strange one. If we're going outside MCU, the first Raimi Spider-Man movie is probably still
well, that's the blueprint for
me.
So much after it.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd have to put that up there. A little lower for me just because it feels formulaic, but that's not fair because it started a lot of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then obviously Superman and yeah. I don't know, I'd have to think about that more.
Justin Hayes on Patreon. It's a messy, contrived third act with a lot of iffy green screen. More than iffy. But when I think of Captain America, despite liking the other two movies better, this is the movie I think of. it nails the character right out of the gate from scene one, and all the characters surrounding him are heartfelt and memorable. Yeah, I think one of the things that this movie doesn't get enough credit for is how good its supporting cast is.
Mm-hmm. Although it doesn't nail it from scene one.
Well, call that scene zero, and you're good. But see, that's like a prologue, Austin. You know what a prologue is?
Well, you can't have a prologue that then leads into another prologue.
No, but I would almost argue that you might not be as annoyed about it if the organization of it was just a little different. Mm-hmm. Where we get that like as a prologue and then you do titles.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I don't want any of that at the beginning, like either way.
I mean, that's fair. I'm just saying
maybe
you might forget about it quicker. Chewbacca's Lover, I liked it when it came out. I liked it a lot when it came out. It's probably just okay. Wish they would have brought Red Skull back. We're all in agreement on that.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone that's like really like, hell yeah, I'm so glad that what we got from Red Skull after this was as a ring wraith on a planet?
No,
in the chat, if you're like, that was the exact way to go, say that.
No, but in the moment, I think people were just excited to get anything with him because we thought we'd never see him again. It's like, oh, cool, there's Red Skull, and then we got to see it, and it was like, oh, all right. I guess that could have been anybody. It didn't
no,
really...
I mean, I definitely had that moment of, oh my god, Red Skull's back, and then, wait, is that really all we're doing with Red Skull?
And if we have to halfway tragically redeem Red Skull, we need more instances of really evil Red Skull first. Like,
we didn't even get to see that awkward moment where Cap has to return the Soul Stone to Red Skull.
Oh man, I wish we'd had that. I never thought about that.
Yeah, he literally had to go back to that planet and be like, "Hey, Red Skull, remember me? Anyways, here's the stone back." How does he even return it? Like, it exists on like a metaphysical plane.
Yeah. How would you get there? Like, we have so many questions.
That's why they don't show any of it, because there's so many questions you can ask about how he returns the stones. But anyways, that Austin, is a story for another day.
You absolutely blew my mind with that. Yeah. Austin, let's go ahead and do our ratings now, and then we'll figure out where these are going to go in rankings. Where do you land on our 5-point scale, sir?
I'm trying to think about that, because it's like, I could go like one of two ways, because it's very much a movie that I think the overall package isn't as good as the individual pieces. Where I feel like there are moments that bump it up to a superhero, but it maybe overall comes down to a hero when it's all put together. And I'm trying to think of where exactly I should go for that. I guess I'll be nice and give it a superhero just based on the individual pieces.
That's where I'm going to go too. There's too much. First of all, great foundational work in this, I think, to not go there with it. Like, the third act certainly drags it down. It's also a really short third act. Like, I feel like the meat of the movie is just not there. It feels like we kind of just rushed to the end, which is not great and is disappointing because, again, Red Skull doesn't get enough to do and gets taken out kind of quick. But,
so few origins don't have that issue.
So much of what works about just this entire universe for me is in Iron Man in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, I have to go superhero too, especially if I'm comparing apples to apples, because then when you keep going with the rest of the MCU, a lot of the things that I would give a hero and wouldn't feel like I could go all the way to villain are not anywhere in the league of this movie.
No, and that's probably fair.
It's kind of how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. No, I never really think about it like in terms of other films with the ranking, but that is probably true.
Yeah, well, and you don't have to. I just can't help myself sometimes. Austin, let's go ahead and look now. So we both say superhero. Let's look at Letterboxd now.
Oh wait, crap! Don't pull up my list yet. I just realized I forgot to do that. I'm gonna
Have you not done
update
it
it.
yet?
Yeah, sorry, I completely forgot.
You're okay. I'm gonna need a minute to set up my browser here. Anyway,
We're so professional.
we are.
When I search Captain America on Letterboxd, the first things I get are the '90s movie and the '70s movie. It's
So
weird.
I found out today. I guess you and I were talking about this. That the '90s movie could possibly get a director's cut release,
Hmm.
which would be nuts. Because apparently, and I knew about this. It was lost for forever. The rest of the footage, and the director's wife is trying to get. Now, it's been miraculously found, and she's trying to get it released. And I really hope that happens.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Watch it be just not that different, but I really think it is. I think it would be quite a bit different.
Well, that's something I have with the Schumacher cut, where I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't know if it'll be that different, but
That one I don't think would be different enough.
mhm.
Like I still want that just for the sake of completion.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that being released. I'd
Forever is
watch
one of
it.
those annoying things that I just feel like we should have that in the first place, where you
Mhm.
have deleted scenes that could very easily be just put into a cut that you put on the DVD. Why in the world was X-Men 1.5, especially when they called it that, not a cut with all those scenes added back in? It's really stupid.
Oh my God, why did we start going through like a phase with that where we were like, this movie point whatever? 'Cause you also have that with Spider-Man 2. It's Spider-Man 2.1.
That was at least a cut and not a release with new deleted scenes.
That is true. The X-Men one is worse, but
I'm kind of more okay with it that way, but no, you're right. The point thing is kind of stupid.
they jumped on that trend before the comics did.
Okay, Austin, did you finally get this set up
Yes.
for us here?
Yes.
Okay. Let me refresh and we'll find out how Austin is going to rank here. Okay, I'm scrolling down looking for Captain America, and he put it at 13, just
Yeah.
under Moonwalker, which
Yeah.
keeps kicking things down the pike. It's
Keeps
ridiculous. It's
knocking them
ridiculous.
down.
Okay, I think you put it really close to where I put it. Just
Oh, okay,
just
cool.
number wise.
Hmm.
I also have it at 13.
Oh wow,
We
we like
both-
lined up perfectly on
We
that.
both put it at 13. Mine I have right underneath Powerpuff Girls, and I went back and forth on it. Like
Mhm.
I can't decide if I want it above or under the Powerpuff Girls movie. But I was fine putting it over Multiverse of Madness, and I was fine putting it under Dark Knight Returns.
No, that makes sense.
So that's where I'm at with it.
That's a
Okay.
good placement.
Well, we got all of our very important segments done, and we have tackled Captain America, the First Avenger. Another point I wanted to make real quick is, and I've probably said this before, but I've always found it a little bit irksome, the lack of a consistent naming scheme in the MCU. That like your first Captain America movie has a moniker. It really didn't have to, because yeah, you had the 1990 movie, but nobody remembers that. It barely counts. So like, why isn't that movie just called Captain America? It's almost like it needed a subtitle or a subheading so that maybe this is the reason, so that overseas it can be released without America in the title.
It's probably like a mix of that. Hulk and Captain America are the only ones that had movies before, so you differentiate it with that. And it's the one right before Avengers, so we want to make sure like everybody knows it's coming next.
I kind of wish if we were going to do that, Thor had also gotten some kind of moniker.
Thor the Avenger from afar.
Well, you just have like you got Incredible Hulk, you have Mighty Thor, and then Captain America, there's not really a thing you can put before it. Like I don't think Sentinel of Liberty is right for this material.
It should have been Captain America, the Star Spangled Man with a Plan. Now that's the title.
It's a very long title, Austin.
Exactly. And then in foreign markets, it can be Captain America, First Avenger.
But I think we can all assume that if they had been able to make a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, they at least wouldn't have done the Amazing Spider-Man thing and called it The Incredible Hulk 2.
Yeah, probably not. Although they did it with Iron Man, maybe. Maybe they would have done that.
Yeah, but Iron Man, it wasn't like The Invincible Iron Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
It was just Iron
course,
Man 2.
Who knows?
I just want to think they wouldn't do that.
Although, to like break into semantics.
Oh, do it.
Because Captain America is the first Avenger because he's from the 40s. Would that not make Thor the first Avenger? Because he's like 1,500 years old?
Well, okay, if we're quibbling over semantics, then my argument with that would be Captain America is ironically worthy of being thought of as an Avenger, but Thor would not have been.
Yeah.
So Thor is the first person alive who will later be an Avenger, but an argument could be made for calling Captain America an Avenger before there are Avengers.
You said that in the most like original superhero rewind voice. Where it sounded like I could hear you reading the script.
You thought it was scripted? I wrote this down before we started. I was ready for that question. I was ready for that question.
There you go.
Austin, would you reveal to everybody what the last Rewind commentary of the year is going to be? We were originally supposed to do this last week, and I wasn't able to make it Friday night, so sorry about that. So we decided to move that to this week, and then we're going to go an extra week where I was going to be off next week, but I wanted to make sure and get one more out. So, Austin, tell everybody what that movie is going to be, which is, in a weird way, sort of related to this. Sort of.
Well, this is one that people probably cared to see us do, and next week is one no one will, but we will, which is Return of Captain Invincible.
Which is really all that matters.
Exactly. That one is going to get 0 ratings, so that's okay.
Return of Captain Invincible, it has become one of my favorite superhero movies, and a lot of people still don't know what it is. But for those of you that do, I'm sure we'll all have a good time together. And if you're not familiar with it, show up anyway, and hopefully you can find a way to watch it. I think it might still be on YouTube.
And for those of you who are like, ugh, that's the movie I don't care about, don't worry. We have like a real doozy for the first one next year.
Yes, we do. I'm going to have to spend some time on that.
It's going to be carnage.
Oh, no, I hope not. Please don't tell everyone that it's going to be carnage. It's not going to be carnage.
Not literally, but metaphorically. There's going to be some carnage.
As always, want to say thanks to you guys for watching and to all of the patrons, but especially our Patreon producers at the $10 tier and above. And one of the perks at that tier is I will read your name dramatically at the end of every episode of the Rewind Commentary Project. And I'm going to do that right this very moment. So thanks a bunch to Breezy, Hemi, Jesse, Surtees, Chewbacca's Lover, Dr. Hello, Goofster123, Joe Turner, Jojira, Super Billy, Vic Apocalypse, Victor, not to be confused with Vic Apocalypse, Abic Stark, Adam March, Damon Begay, Hot Soup, Invisipig, Kareem Roberts, Kate, MattBat68, Matthew Brody, Michael Martin, and Wendell Jones. Thank you guys, and we will see you again next week, hopefully. It'll probably be a smaller audience, but we got to do them all at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And then everyone will go excited time after that. When we have our last dance.
But that movie is nuts. It's a musical. It's about a interestingly, Captain. So I say it's kind of related to this because it's about another World War II superhero out of time in a different way, but he's kind of a comedic blend of both Captain America and Iron Man. Mm-hmm. He's like if Steve Rogers degenerated into Tony Stark.
Yeah, exactly. And if we got more than just one Star Spangled Man song.
Austin likes it because he finally gets a movie about an alcoholic superhero.
Yay! And with Christopher Lee.
Yeah. Hey, what
and Christopher Lee is the villain of a Captain America movie, so there you go.
Oh, yeah. What Iron Man villain would you cast Christopher Lee as?
Oh, God, that's hard. I don't know. I've never thought about that. I mean, I feel like it would be cool to have him hanging out with Hammer, because Hammer was originally based on... oh, my God, now I'm blanking on his name. Tarkin. Peter Cushing.
Oh, good call.
You maybe could have had him, like, pal around with Hammer.
Yeah. I put you on the spot. It's my favorite thing to do. Thanks again for watching, folks.
Yeah, he can be Blizzard.
We'll see you again
Blizzard
next time.
or Ghost.
I was Captain Logan, and this is Austin, the Day Ghost.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Bye, folks.